The Star Wars saga hangs suspended by a thread of possibility, where one altered choice could unravel destiny and weave an entirely new galaxy across the stars. These unseen timelines reveal Obi-Wan Kenobi standing at the precipice of darkness twice, first beside Qui-Gon's fallen form on Naboo, then years later as Palpatine's shadow beckons with promises of power. We witness the Skywalker twins walking exchanged paths, Leia's destiny forged under Tatooine's twin suns, while Luke navigates the intricate dance of politics and power on Alderaan. Each shift sends tremors through the Force, reshaping futures in ways no one could predict, like Padmé Amidala surviving to shield her children and kindle the flames of rebellion from the galaxy's hidden corners. The Force itself bends differently in these realities, whispering secrets of what might have been through the corridors of time. Imagine a galaxy where Mace Windu's blade strikes true, ending Palpatine's reign before it begins. Consider how the Clone Wars might have unfolded if Qui-Gon Jinn had lived to guide Anakin's path. As we drift into these what-if scenarios, let your mind wander gently while remaining engaged with each unfolding narrative. Settle in, let your mind drift, and allow the story to unfold around you. Let's start with the first what-if scenario. What if Obi-Wan turned to the dark side? What if I told you that Obi-Wan Kenobi's path to darkness began not with Anakin, but with the death of his own master on Naboo? This alternate timeline reveals how grief and manipulation could have transformed the noble Jedi into a Sith Lord known as Darth Malice. The red sands of Naboo still held the heat of battle as Obi-Wan cradled Qui-Gon's failing body, the older Jedi's blood warm against his hands. The hum of the energy shield pulsed like a dying heartbeat as Darth Maul stood poised for victory, his double-bladed lightsaber casting twin shadows. Obi-Wan felt something fracture within him as Qui-Gon whispered his last words, not of peace, but of unfinished business. The Force itself seemed to recoil as Obi-Wan's grief curdled into something darker, something hungry. In that moment of vulnerability, a shadow fell across his spirit that would never fully lift. The Naboo palace corridors echoed with his ragged breathing as he carried his master's body away from the battlefield. The cold marble floors of the Udid's palace seemed to absorb his sorrow as Obi-Wan prepared Qui-Gon's body for the funeral pyre. Chancellor Palpatine approached him with practiced sympathy, his eyes holding a knowing glint that Obi-Wan was too grief-stricken to question. "Such a terrible loss," Palpatine murmured, his voice like honey laced with poison. The Jedi Council should have sent more support. They underestimated the threat. These words planted seeds of doubt that would grow like weeds in Obi-Wan's wounded heart. The scent of burning incense filled the temple as Qui-Gon's body was consumed by flames, orange light dancing on Obi-Wan's tear-streaked face. Palpatine watched from a distance, sensing the raw power of Obi-Wan's grief like a predator sensing weakness in its prey. The funeral pyre's crackle seemed to whisper promises of vengeance that Obi-Wan tried desperately to ignore. That night, Obi-Wan dreamed of Qui-Gon's death not once but repeatedly, each dream ending with his hands around Maul's throat. The Jedi Temple on Coruscant felt cold and unwelcoming upon Obi-Wan's return, its ancient stones seeming to judge his sorrow. The Council's condolences rang hollow as they immediately assigned him Anakin's training, treating the boy as a burden rather than the chosen one. "The boy is dangerous," Master Windu stated flatly, his expression unreadable. "They all sense it. Why can't you?" Obi-Wan wondered privately, his frustration simmering beneath his calm exterior. The training saw became a prison as Obi-Wan struggled to balance his grief with his new responsibilities. Anakin's raw talent was undeniable, but his fear and attachment radiated through the Force like a beacon. Palpatine began visiting the young Padawan, offering fatherly advice that subtly undermined Obi-Wan's authority. "Your master is still grieving," the Chancellor would whisper to Anakin when Obi-Wan was out of earshot. The political maneuvering in the Senate chambers felt increasingly distant from the real threats facing the galaxy. The weight of Anakin's training pressed down on Obi-Wan like a physical burden. As the years passed, the boy's nightmares grew more frequent, his fear of loss manifesting as anger during training sessions. Obi-Wan found himself increasingly impatient, his own unresolved grief coloring his teaching methods. Palpatine's invitations to discuss galactic politics became more frequent, their conversations drifting toward philosophical topics. Sometimes the Jedi Code is too restrictive, the Chancellor mused over cups of fragrant tea. True power requires understanding all aspects of the Force, not just the light. These words resonated with Obi-Wan, who had begun questioning the Council's refusal to acknowledge the dark side's growing influence. The Coruscant skyline glittered outside Palpatine's office window, a galaxy of possibilities that seemed increasingly out of reach. In quiet moments, Obi-Wan found himself practicing Force techniques that felt strangely powerful yet unsettlingly familiar. The Jedi Council's chambers echoed with arguments, as Obi-Wan increasingly challenged their decisions regarding Anakin's training. "The boy needs guidance, not restrictions," Obi-Wan insisted, his voice tight with frustration. Master Yoda's ears drooped with concern as he sensed the growing darkness in his former Padawan. "Fear leads to anger, anger leads to hate," Yoda warned gently, but Obi-Wan barely heard him. The training cell became a battleground of wills as Anakin tested boundaries and Obi-Wan struggled to maintain control. Palpatine's gifts of ancient Sith texts arrived wrapped in plain paper, their leather covers cool to the touch. Obi-Wan told himself he was studying the enemy, but the power described in those pages called to something deep within him. The Temple Library's archives felt increasingly confining as Obi-Wan sought knowledge beyond Jedi restrictions. Late at night, he would practice techniques from the forbidden texts, feeling power surge through him like lightning. The first time Obi-Wan deliberately used the dark side was during a mission to protect a Republic senator from bounty hunters. Blaster fire erupted in the narrow corridor as the senator fell, wounded and screaming. Something snapped inside Obi-Wan as he reached out with the Force not to defend but to destroy. The bounty hunters screamed as their own weapons turned against them, their bones cracking under invisible pressure. The metallic scent of blood filled the air as Obi-Wan stood over their bodies, breathing heavily. The dark side felt intoxicating, like a drug that promised relief from his constant pain. Palpatine's congratulations arrived via encrypted message, praising his decisive action. The Jedi Council sensed something wrong but could not identify the source of their unease. That night, Obi-Wan dreamed not of Qui-Gon but of power unlimited and enemies trembling before him. The transformation accelerated as Obi-Wan began secretly meeting Palpatine in the lower levels of Coruscant. The Chancellor revealed his true identity as Darth Sidious, offering Obi-Wan a place at his side as his new apprentice. The Jedi are weak, bound by their outdated code, Sidious hissed, his yellow eyes gleaming in the dim light. "Together we could bring true order to the galaxy." Obi-Wan's resistance crumbled as Sidious showed him visions of a galaxy at peace, under their combined rule. The ritual of embracing the dark side took place in a forgotten Sith temple beneath the city planet. Ancient stones whispered with dark power as Obi-Wan knelt before Sidious, renouncing his Jedi vows. The pain of transformation was excruciating, like fire in his veins, but when it ended, he felt reborn. "Rise, Darth Malus," Sidious commanded, and Obi-Wan rose as someone new entirely. The newly christened Darth Malus returned to the Jedi Temple wearing his former face like a mask. The Force signature that once radiated calm now pulsed with controlled darkness, hidden beneath layers of deception. Anakin sensed something different in his master, but attributed it to the increasing pressures of the war. The Clone Wars raged across the galaxy, providing perfect cover for Malus's true allegiance to Sidious. Battle after battle, Malus demonstrated new powers that awed his fellow Jedi and terrified their enemies. The ability to choke opponents from across the battlefield raised eyebrows, but was dismissed as a necessary innovation. In private, Malus trained Anakin in techniques that skirted the edge of darkness, testing his Padawan's susceptibility. The boy's fear of loss made him vulnerable, his attachment to those he loved a crack Malus could exploit. The time was approaching when Anakin would have to choose between the Jedi and a new path. The final confrontation came not on Mustafar, but in the Jedi Temple's meditation gardens. Twilight painted the Coruscant sky in shades of orange and purple as Malus revealed his true nature to Anakin. "The Jedi have lied to us both," Malice said, his lightsaber igniting with a crimson snap hiss. Anakin's blue blade met his in a shower of sparks, confusion and betrayal warring on his young face. "Join me," Malice offered, his voice a seductive whisper. "Together we can bring order to the galaxy, end this meaningless war." The garden's ancient trees seemed to lean in, bearing witness to this pivotal moment. Anakin's breath came in ragged gasps as he weighed his options, his eyes darting between Malice's outstretched hand and the distant temple spires. The fate of the galaxy hung in the balance as the former master and Padawan stood locked in this moment of decision. And in the gathering darkness, the Force itself seemed to hold its breath, waiting to see which path the Chosen One would choose. Let's move on to the next what-if theory. What if I told you that Darth Plagueis, the legendary Sith Lord who could cheat death, survived his apprentice's treacherous attack? This alternate timeline reveals how the Moon's mastery over life force allowed him to endure what should have been certain death, setting two Sith masters on a collision course. The rain lashed against the transparisteel windows of Plagueis's Coruscant penthouse as he slept, unaware of the darkness approaching. Palpatine moved like a shadow through the opulent chambers, his heart cold with determination to claim ultimate power. The hum of the city below provided a constant backdrop as Palpatine raised his hands, gathering dark side energy. Lightning crackled between his fingers, casting eerie blue light across Plagueis's sleeping form. The first bolt struck the Moon's chest, searing through silk and flesh as Plagueis's eyes flew open in shock and pain. Palpatine smiled as he unleashed more Force lightning, watching his master convulse violently against the expensive sheets. The smell of ozone and burned fabric filled the room as Plagueis's body went limp, his breathing ceasing. Palpatine leaned closer, sensing the life force extinguish, and allowed himself a moment of triumphant satisfaction. What he failed to perceive was the faint spark of vitality that Plagueis had preserved through decades of mastering midichlorian manipulation. As Palpatine departed to claim his rightful place as Sith Master, Plagueis's body began a microscopic transformation. The millions remaining midichlorians reorganized, knitting together damaged tissue and redirecting energy to vital organs. Plagueis's consciousness retreated into a deep healing trance, his body appearing completely lifeless to any who might discover it. The penthouse remained silent and still, a tomb that was not yet a tomb. Outside, the rain continued to fall, washing away any evidence of the assassination attempt. Days passed as Plagueis floated in the void between life and death, his body slowly repairing itself. Medical droids dispatched by Palpatine confirmed his death, their scanners unable to detect the faint life signs he deliberately suppressed. The Moonion's body was transported to a private medical facility under Palpatine's orders, ostensibly for proper Sith burial. Within the sterile chamber, Plagueis's healing continued, his mastery over life force working even in this state of near death. The antiseptic smell of the medical facility filled his nostrils as consciousness slowly returned. His eyes fluttered open, taking in the unfamiliar ceiling and the soft hum of medical equipment. Plagueis sat up with surprising strength, his long fingers touching the place where Palpatine's lightning had struck. The betrayal hit him like a physical blow as he accessed the facility's computers, discovering how much time had passed. The data terminals glowed with information about Palpatine's rapid rise to chancellorship and the outbreak of the Clone Wars. Plagueis felt a cold rage simmer beneath his calm exterior as he realized his apprentice had stolen their grand plan. The Moon's specialized knowledge of life force allowed him to alter his appearance, making himself unrecognizable to any who might remember him. He slipped out of the medical facility like a ghost, disappearing into the lower levels of Coruscant. The grimy corridors and damp alleys became his new home as he observed the galaxy his apprentice now sought to control. Plagueis accessed secret accounts and resources Palpatine didn't know existed, building a network of informants and agents. From the shadows, he watched Palpatine manipulate both sides of the Clone Wars, feeling a twisted pride in his students' cunning. The Moon began subtly influencing events, leaking information to the Jedi about separatist movements and Palpatine's growing power. The Moon began subtly influencing events, leaking information to the Jedi about separatist movements and Palpatine's growing power. The Jedi Temple received anonymous data packets containing details about the clone army's mysterious origins. Plagueis watched with satisfaction as the Council began investigating the inhibitor chips embedded in every clone's brain. He manipulated separatist leaders to make strategic errors that prolonged the war, keeping Palpatine from achieving total victory too quickly. The moon's influence spread like a dark web across the galaxy, unseen but deeply felt by those sensitive to the Force. Palpatine sensed disturbances in his plans but couldn't identify their source, attributing them to Jedi interference or separatist incompetence. Plagueis took particular pleasure in anonymously saving Jedi who might have died, ensuring they remained thorns in his apprentice's side. The moon's power grew as he tapped into the dark side energies generated by the galaxy-wide conflict. He began preparing for the moment when he would reveal himself to Palpatine, savoring the anticipation of his former student's shock. The revelation came during a pivotal moment in the war, when Palpatine believed himself close to total victory. Plagueis arranged for their paths to cross in an abandoned Sith temple beneath Coruscant's surface. Ancient stones carved with dark side runes lined the chamber where Palpatine arrived, expecting to meet a separatist envoy. Instead, he found his former master standing before the altar, restored to full power and radiating cold fury. Palpatine's face went pale, then flushed with anger as he realized his greatest failure. "You should have made certain I was dead," Apprentice Plagueis said, his voice echoing in the chamber. The two Sith Lords circled each other like predators, the air crackling with dark side energy. "The rule of two demands that you yield to me," Palpatine hissed, his hand moving toward his lightsaber. The temple seemed to hold its breath as the two masters faced each other, each possessing knowledge the other needed. Plagueis had spent years studying his apprentice's methods, anticipating his strategies and countermoves. Palpatine had grown arrogant in his power, underestimating the moon's resilience and cunning. Lightning erupted between them as both unleashed the dark side, illuminating the ancient carvings on the walls. The Force itself recoiled from this confrontation of two powerful Sith masters, each determined to claim ultimate control. Plagueis used his mastery over life force to weaken Palpatine, targeting the midi-chlorians that gave him his connection to the dark side. Palpatine fought back with political knowledge and military resources, threatening to expose Plagueis to the Jedi if attacked. They reached an uneasy stalemate, recognizing that open conflict would destroy them both and leave the galaxy to their enemies. The galaxy became a chessboard for two dark masters, each moving pieces in a game of cosmic consequences. Plagueis retreated deeper into the shadows, building his power base among banking clans and corporate interests. Palpatine accelerated his plans, creating Order 66 and preparing to declare himself Emperor. The Jedi found themselves caught between two Sith threats, sensing the darkness but unable to identify its dual sources. Planets aligned themselves unknowingly with one master or the other, their fates determined by invisible forces. The Clone Wars became more complex, with secret agendas within secret agendas driving the conflict. Ordinary beings across the galaxy felt the growing tension, like a storm approaching that they couldn't name. Two Sith Lords, master and apprentice, turned equals, prepared for a war that would determine the galaxy's ultimate fate. And in the darkness between stars, the outcome remained uncertain, with the balance of power hanging on a knife's edge of betrayal and ambition. Let's move on to the next what-if theory. What if I told you that Mace Windu's blade struck true that day in Palpatine's office, ending the Sith Lord's life before his plans could reach fruition? This alternate timeline reveals how the galaxy might have transformed if the Jedi had successfully eliminated their greatest threat, only to face the political chaos that followed. The Chancellor's office was bathed in the crimson glow of Palpatine's lightning as he unleashed his dark side fury against Windu and the other Jedi Masters. The air crackled with energy as Kola, Tien, and Fisto fell one by one, leaving only Windu to face the Sith Lord alone. The purple lightsaber hummed with power as Windu reflected the lightning back upon Palpatine, deforming the Chancellor's face with each surge of energy. The smell of ozone and burning flesh filled the room as Palpatine screamed in pain and rage. Windu's face was a mask of determination as he pressed his advantage, driving the Sith Lord back toward the win. The Coruscant skyline glittered beyond, unaware of the pivotal moment unfolding within the Chancellor's office. Anakin raced through the Senate halls, his heart pounding with fear and uncertainty. The turbolift seemed to move impossibly slowly as he ascended toward the confrontation that would decide the galaxy's fate. Palpatine's voice echoed in his mind, promising the power to save Padmé from the death he had foreseen in his dreams. The lift doors finally opened, but Anakin was too late. The sound of a lightsaber striking flesh reached his ears just as he rounded the corner. Windu stood over Palpatine's fallen form, the Chancellor's body still smoking from the fatal blow. The purple blade withdrew as Windu turned, his expression shifting from triumph to shock at seeing Anakin in the doorway. "What have you done?" Anakin whispered, his face pale with horror and disbelief. The office fell silent except for the hum of Windu's lightsaber and the distant sounds of the city below. The weight of what had just happened settled upon Windu like a physical burden. He had killed the Supreme Chancellor of the Republic, a man beloved by the people and leader of the Senate. The Jedi Master's mind raced as he considered the implications of this act, both for the Order and for the galaxy. Anakin stared at Palpatine's body, his emotions churning between relief that the Sith was dead and terror at what this meant for his own future. He was a Sith Lord, Anakin, Windu explained, his voice steady despite the tremor in his hands. He was manipulating both sides of the war, playing us all for fools. The young Jedi Knight struggled to process this information, his mind reeling from the implications. The office felt suddenly cold, as if all warmth had fled with Palpatine's last breath. Windu activated his comlink, his voice tight with tension as he summoned the Jedi Council to an emergency meeting. The remaining Masters arrived swiftly, their robes whispering, as they entered the office and beheld the impossible scene before them. Yoda's ears drooped with sorrow as he sensed the truth in the Force, his ancient eyes closing briefly in meditation. Ki-Adi-Mundi knelt beside Palpatine's body, confirming what they all already knew. The Chancellor was truly dead. Senate must be informed, Mundi stated, his voice heavy with responsibility. But how, Windu countered, do we reveal he was a Sith Lord and risk destroying faith in the Republic itself? The council members exchanged worried glances, each understanding the precarious position they now occupied. The fate of the galaxy hung in the balance as they debated their next move. Anakin stood apart from the council, his presence both necessary and unwelcome in this moment of crisis. He felt the weight of Palpatine's promises turning to ash in his mind, along with any hope of saving Padmé through Sith knowledge. The young Jedi's hands clenched at his sides as he struggled with conflicting emotions: relief, anger, fear, and betrayal. The Council's decision to conceal the truth about Palpatine's Sith identity only deepened his sense of alienation from the Order. "We will announce that Chancellor Palpatine was assassinated by Separatist agents," Yoda finally declared, his voice heavy with unspoken regret. Anakin's eyes widened in disbelief at this deliberate deception, this betrayal of the truth the Jedi were meant to uphold. The Council's decision felt like another betrayal in a day already filled with them. The Force itself seemed to murmur with disquiet at this path they had chosen. The Senate chamber echoed with shocked whispers as Windu stepped forward to deliver the news of Palpatine's death. The holographic displays showed the Jedi Master's solemn face as he explained the assassination by unknown Separatist operatives. Senators across the chamber expressed outrage and grief, many having genuinely admired and trusted the Chancellor. Bail Organa watched with narrowed eyes, sensing something amiss in the Jedi's carefully worded statement. The smell of fear and uncertainty permeated the chamber as the Republic suddenly found itself leaderless in the midst of war. Maz Amedda, Palpatine's loyal vice-chair, stepped forward to assume temporary leadership, his face a mask of appropriate grief. Anakin stood at the back of the chamber, hidden in the shadows, his heart growing colder with each passing moment. The deception settled over the Republic like a shroud, concealing the truth beneath layers of political necessity. The Jedi Temple became a fortress in the days that followed, its gates closed to all but essential personnel. Anakin moved through its halls like a ghost, his presence a constant reminder of the secrets they now kept. The Council watched him with concerned eyes, sensing his growing distance but unsure how to bridge the gap. Padmé noticed the change in her husband, his nightmares growing worse, his temper shorter, his affection more desperate. "Something is wrong," she whispered one night as he stared out at the Coruscant skyline, his eyes distant. Anakin couldn't bring himself to tell her the truth, that the Jedi had lied to the Republic, that they had killed the Chancellor in cold blood. The weight of their deception pressed down on him, fueling his resentment toward the order he had once revered. The Force seemed to whisper warnings of darkness ahead, warnings Anakin was increasingly inclined to ignore. The Republic stumbled forward without Palpatine's guiding hand, the Senate fracturing into factions, vying for control. The Jedi found themselves increasingly drawn into political matters, despite their traditional separation from such affairs. Windu assumed a prominent role in the interim government, his grim determination to maintain order, earning both respect and suspicion. Anakin watched from the sidelines, his bitterness growing as he saw the Jedi compromising their principles for political expediency. The Clone Wars continued to rage across the galaxy, but without Palpatine's dual control, the conflict began to lose its manufactured symmetry. The Jedi Council sensed the shifting tides but could not predict where they would ultimately lead. In the quiet moments between battles and political maneuvers, the galaxy held its breath, waiting to see what new shape would emerge from the chaos. And in the shadows, unseen forces began to stir, sensing opportunity in the uncertainty of this new era. Let's hear the next what-if theory. What if I told you that Obi-Wan Kenobi's final strike on Mustafar was not one of mercy, but of execution, ending Anakin Skywalker's life instead of leaving him to burn? This alternate timeline reveals how the galaxy might have transformed if the Chosen One had truly died that day, leaving his master burdened with an unspeakable guilt and the Empire without its most feared enforcer. The volcanic planet of Mustafar burned beneath them as Obi-Wan and Anakin clashed on the narrow observation platform overlooking rivers of lava. The heat was oppressive, searing their lungs and causing sweat to pour down their faces as they fought with desperate fury. Blue and red lightsabers crashed together in a shower of sparks, each combatant drawing on deep wells of pain and betrayal. "You are the Chosen One," Obi-Wan cried out, his voice cracking with emotion as he parried Anakin's vicious assault. The platform groaned under their weight, metal already weakened by the intense heat of the planet's core. Anakin's eyes burned with yellow fire as he unleashed his rage, his connection to the dark side growing stronger with each passing moment. The duel reached its climax as Anakin made a reckless leap, overextending himself in his arrogance. Obi-Wan saw the opening and took it, his blue lightsaber slicing through Anakin's remaining good arm and then, in a moment of terrible clarity, driving toward his heart. The look of shock on Anakin's face as the blade pierced his chest would haunt Obi-Wan for the rest of his days. Time seemed to slow as the younger man fell backward, his lightsaber dropping from his lifeless fingers and tumbling into the lava below. Obi-Wan stood frozen, the reality of what he had done washing over him like a wave of icy water. The smell of burning flesh filled the air as Anakin's body rolled down the black sand slope, coming to rest mere feet from the flowing lava. The former Jedi Master collapsed to his knees, the weight of his actions crushing him as he realized he had killed his own brother. Tears streamed down his face, mixing with the soot and sweat as grief overwhelmed him. The sound of approaching ships pulled Obi-Wan from his despair, reminding him that others still needed him. Padmé's ship landed nearby, and she rushed out, her face pale with fear, as she searched for her husband. Obi-Wan met her, his expression grim as he delivered the terrible news that would shatter her world. Padmé's scream of anguish echoed across the volcanic landscape as she collapsed, her grief so profound that it sent ripples through the Force. Obi-Wan helped her to her feet, supporting her as they boarded her ship and fled Mustafar before Palpatine's forces could arrive. The medical droid on board confirmed what Padmé already suspected. She was pregnant with twins, a final gift from the man she had lost. Obi-Wan made a solemn vow to protect Anakin's children, seeing in them a chance for redemption. The ship jumped to hyperspace, leaving behind the fiery tomb of the Chosen One. Polis Massa became their temporary refuge, its sterile medical facilities a stark contrast to the fiery hell of Mustafar. Padmé gave birth to twins under the watchful eyes of medical droids and a heartbroken Obi-Wan. The children were perfect, a boy and a girl with their father's features and their mother's strength. Obi-Wan felt a fresh wave of grief as he held them, knowing they would never know the man who had fathered them. The decision was made to separate the twins for their protection, a painful but necessary precaution against the Empire's wrath. Obi-Wan would take Luke to Tatooine, to be raised by Anakin's stepbrother Owen Lars. Bail Organa would take Leia to Alderaan, where he and his wife would raise her as their own daughter. Padmé, though broken by grief, insisted on maintaining a role in the growing resistance against Palpatine's tyranny. Coruscant felt the disturbance in the Force as Palpatine sensed his apprentice's death from across the galaxy. The Emperor's rage was terrible to behold as he realized his plans for a Sith dynasty had been destroyed along with Anakin. In his fury, Palpatine destroyed much of his own throne room, dark side energy crackling around him like lightning. The search for a new apprentice began immediately, with Palpatine considering multiple candidates to fill the void left by Vader. The Inquisitorius program was expanded, creating multiple dark side users to hunt down the remaining Jedi. Without Vader's singular power and presence, the Empire's rule became more bureaucratic, more distributed across various military and political leaders. Grand Moff Tarkin rose to prominence, his methods of control through fear becoming the Empire's primary strategy. The galaxy felt the absence of Vader's terrifying presence, though few would have admitted they missed the Sith Lord. The rebellion formed differently in this timeline, growing from seeds planted by Padmé and her allies in the Senate. Without Vader as the Empire's primary enforcer, the early resistance cells faced less coordinated opposition. Padmé became a symbol of hope, using her diplomatic connections and moral authority to build opposition to Palpatine's rule. The twins grew up unaware of each other, but both felt the pull of destiny through the Force that flowed between them. Luke Skywalker learned the ways of the Force from Obi-Wan in secret on Tatooine, his training progressing faster without the shadow of his father's legacy. Leia Organa became a political prodigy, her fiery spirit and dedication to justice, making her a natural leader in the rebellion. The paths that would eventually bring the twins together were being laid, though neither knew of the other's existence. The Force worked in mysterious ways, guiding events toward a confrontation that would determine the galaxy's fate. Obi-Wan Kenobi lived as a hermit in the Jundland wastes of Tatooine, his days spent watching over young Luke from a distance. The guilt of what he had done to Anakin weighed heavily on him, aging him beyond his years. In quiet moments he would speak to the spirit of his former Padawan through the Force, seeking forgiveness he could never grant himself. The twin sons of Tatooine beat down on his humble dwelling as he meditated, his connection to the light side tempered by sorrow. Luke would visit sometimes, bringing supplies and listening to stories of the Clone Wars and the Jedi Order. Obi-Wan saw so much of Anakin in the boy, his talent, his enthusiasm, his impatience, and it both warmed and broke his heart. The old Jedi Master knew that one day Luke would have to face the truth about his father and the terrible choice Obi-Wan had made. Until then, he would watch and wait, protecting the boy and preparing him for a destiny neither could fully comprehend. The Empire tightened its grip on the galaxy, its methods growing more brutal without Vader to temper Palpatine's cruelty. Rebellion cells formed on countless worlds, their resistance growing bolder with each passing year. Padmé, Amidala, became the public face of the opposition, her status as a former queen and senator giving her legitimacy Palpatine could not easily dismiss. The twins grew stronger in the Force, though neither yet understood the full extent of their abilities or their connection to each other. On Coruscant, Palpatine grew ever more paranoid, his power base secure but his vision of eternal Sith rule incomplete without a worthy apprentice. The Inquisitors hunted Jedi survivors with ruthless efficiency, but without Vader's singular power, some managed to escape and join the growing rebellion. The galaxy balanced on a knife's edge, with the forces of light and darkness preparing for a conflict that would determine its future. And in the deserts of Tatooine, Obi-Wan Kenobi watched the stars, wondering if he had made the right choice or if he had doomed them all by killing the man he had loved like a brother. Let's hear the next what-if theory. What if I told you that Qui-Gon Jinn's survival on Naboo changed everything, preventing Anakin's fall and altering the galaxy's destiny? This alternate timeline reveals how the wise Jedi Master's continued guidance might have steered the Chosen One away from darkness. The ripple effects of Qui-Gon's survival would transform the Clone Wars and the fate of the Jedi Order itself. The red energy shields of the Theed generator complex pulsed rhythmically as Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan faced Darth Maul in their separate chambers. The Sith Lord's double-bladed lightsaber hummed with deadly precision as he pressed his attack against Qui-Gon, testing the Jedi Master's defenses. Unlike the original timeline, Qui-Gon sensed the shift in Maul's tactics just before the surprise attack came. His green lightsaber moved in a blur, parrying the thrust that would have impaled him in the original timeline. The surprise on Maul's face was evident as his carefully planned ambush failed to achieve its intended result. The duel raged on with renewed intensity as Qui-Gon and Maul exchanged blows, their movements a deadly dance of light and shadow. The sound of lightsabers clashing echoed through the chamber as Obi-Wan struggled to reach his master, trapped by the energy shields. Qui-Gon's calm demeanor never wavered, even as Maul's ferocious assault pushed him back toward the edge of the melting pit. The Jedi Master's connection to the living Force guided his actions, allowing him to anticipate Maul's movements with uncanny accuracy. When the shields finally dropped, Obi-Wan rushed forward to join the battle, his blue lightsaber adding to the flurry of motion. Together, the two Jedi pressed their advantage, their complementary fighting styles creating an impenetrable defense against Maul's onslaught. The Sith Lord found himself overwhelmed, unable to match the combined power of the Jedi Master and his determined Padawan. In a final desperate move, Maul lunged at Qui-Gon, leaving himself open to Obi-Wan's decisive strike. The Sith Lord fell into the melting pit, his body bisected by Obi-Wan's lightsaber as he screamed his final defiance. Qui-Gon placed a reassuring hand on his Padawan's shoulder, pride evident in his eyes at Obi-Wan's skill and bravery. The generator complex fell silent, except for the hum of the lightsabers as the Jedi deactivated their weapons. The victory was complete, but both Jedi knew this was merely the beginning of a larger conflict. As they made their way back through the palace, Qui-Gon's thoughts turned to the young boy he had discovered on Tatooine. The Council would undoubtedly object to training Anakin, but Qui-Gon felt more strongly than ever that the boy was indeed the Chosen One. The Force whispered its approval of this path, filling Qui-Gon with a sense of destiny that could not be denied. The Naboo celebration that followed was joyous, but Qui-Gon remained focused on the future, on the challenges that lay ahead. The Jedi Temple on Coruscant welcomed the heroes of Naboo, but the Council's reception was cooler than Qui-Gon had hoped. "You defy the Council's decision, Master Jinn," Mace Windu stated, his voice tight with disapproval. Yoda's ears drooped with concern as he sensed the powerful connection between Anakin and the Force. Qui-Gon stood firm, his calm presence a stark contrast to the Council's apprehension. "The boy's future is clouded, dangerous," Yoda warned, his Garma stick tapping softly on the chamber floor. "But the will of the Force is clear," Qui-Gon countered, his voice steady with conviction. The debate raged for hours, with Qui-Gon presenting compelling evidence of Anakin's potential importance. Finally, a compromise was reached. Qui-Gon would train Anakin, but Obi-Wan would share the responsibility, creating an unprecedented teaching arrangement. The training of Anakin Skywalker began under the watchful eyes of two very different masters, each offering unique perspectives on the Force. Qui-Gon's unorthodox methods emphasized intuition and living in the moment, teaching Anakin to trust his feelings and connections to the world around him. Obi-Wan provided structure and discipline, ensuring Anakin learned the techniques and protocols essential to a Jedi's life. The boy thrived under this dual guidance, his raw talent channeled into purpose rather than frustration. Qui-Gon often took Anakin to places beyond the temple, showing him how the Force flowed through all living things. They meditated in the fields of Naboo, listened to the Force in the crystal caves of Ilum, and studied the balance of nature on the Wookiee homeworld of Kashyyyk. These experiences grounded Anakin, giving him a connection to the galaxy that went beyond Jedi dogma. The young Padawan's confidence grew, but so did his humility, as Qui-Gon taught him the importance of serving others. As Anakin grew older, His relationship with Padmé Amidala blossomed from friendship into something deeper, more complicated. Qui-Gon noticed the attachment forming between them, but chose a different approach than the Council might have taken. Instead of forbidding the connection, he guided Anakin through understanding his feelings, teaching him about love without possession. Attachment leads to suffering, yes, Qui-Gon explained during a quiet meditation session. But love itself is not the enemy, Anakin. It is how we hold onto it that creates danger. These conversations helped Anakin navigate his feelings for Padmé without the fear and secrecy that would have otherwise consumed him. Qui-Gon even facilitated meetings between the two, ensuring their relationship developed openly and honestly. This transparency allowed Anakin to maintain his Jedi commitments while acknowledging his heart's desires, finding a balance that eluded him in other timelines. The political landscape of the Republic shifted as Chancellor Palpatine rose to power, his charisma and vision earning him widespread admiration. Qui-Gon, however, sensed something unsettling about the Chancellor, a darkness that lurked beneath his pleasant exterior. Unlike other Jedi who dismissed these feelings as mere distrust of politicians, Qui-Gon investigated further, using his unique connection to the living Force. He began spending time in the Senate, observing Palpatine's interactions and the subtle ways he influenced those around him. The Jedi Master discovered patterns of manipulation, carefully crafted events that always seemed to benefit Palpatine's growing authority. Qui-Gon shared his concerns with the Council, but they remained skeptical, unwilling to accuse the beloved Chancellor without concrete evidence. Undeterred, Qui-Gon continued his investigation, taking Anakin with him to teach the young Padawan about political awareness. These lessons would prove invaluable as the galaxy moved closer to conflict. The Clone Wars erupted with shocking violence, but Qui-Gon's influence had already prepared Anakin for the trials ahead. The young Jedi Knight faced the horrors of war with a calm center, his connection to the Force balanced by Qui-Gon's teachings. When the temptations of the dark side whispered promises of power to protect those he loved, Anakin had the tools to resist. Qui-Gon had taught him that true strength came not from domination, but from understanding and harmony. The Jedi Master's wisdom guided Anakin through the darkest moments of the war, helping him maintain his identity amid the chaos. Meanwhile, Qui-Gon's investigation into Palpatine finally bore fruit, revealing the Chancellor's true identity as Darth Sidious. The Jedi acted swiftly, confronting Palpatine before his plans could reach fruition. Without Anakin as his apprentice and with the Jedi forewarned, Palpatine's attempt to destroy the Order failed. The galaxy found itself at a crossroads, as the Clone Wars ended without the rise of the Empire. The Jedi Order, guided by Qui-Gon's wisdom, began a period of reflection and reform, addressing the complacency that had allowed the Sith to infiltrate the Republic. Anakin Skywalker fulfilled his destiny as the Chosen One, not by destroying the Sith in a final confrontation, but by bringing balance to the Force through his example of harmony between light and dark within himself. Padmé stood beside him, their love no longer a secret, but a testament to the possibility of attachment without possession. The twins Luke and Leia were born into a galaxy at peace, their Force sensitivity nurtured openly by their parents and their uncle Qui-Gon. The Jedi Order evolved, embracing new perspectives while honoring ancient traditions, becoming true guardians of peace and justice. The Republic healed from the wounds of war, stronger and more united than before. And in the quiet moments between adventures, Qui-Gon Jinn would smile, knowing that his survival on Naboo had indeed changed everything, creating a future where hope flourished and the Force flowed in perfect balance. Let's move on to the next what-if theory. What if I told you that the Jedi Order discovered the terrible secret of Order 66 before it could be executed, changing the fate of the galaxy forever? This alternate timeline reveals how a single vision of the future might have prevented the Jedi's near extinction and altered the course of the Clone Wars. The ripple effects of this discovery would transform not only the Jedi Order, but the very fabric of the Republic itself. The Jedi Temple meditation chambers were quiet as Master Yoda closed his eyes, reaching out with the Force to sense the flow of the war. Images flashed through his mind, clone troopers turning on their Jedi commanders, blaster fire in the temple halls, the screams of dying Jedi. The small green master's eyes flew open in horror as the vision's meaning became clear. The Force had shown him a future of betrayal, a hidden command waiting to be unleashed. Yoda immediately summoned the Jedi Council, his expression grave with the weight of what he had witnessed. The council chamber was bathed in the soft light of Coruscant's evening. As the masters gathered to hear Yoda's disturbing vision, Mace Windu's face hardened as he listened, his hands clenching into fists at the implication of such treachery. The Chancellor must be informed immediately, Ki-Adi-Mundi insisted, but Yoda shook his head slowly. "Trust in the Chancellor, we cannot," the Ancient Master replied, his voice heavy with concern. The Council decided to investigate secretly, using their most trusted agents to uncover the truth about the clone army's origins. Master Shaak Ti was dispatched to Kamino, her diplomatic skills perfect for questioning the cloners without raising suspicion. Meanwhile, Master Plo Koon began discreetly scanning the clone troopers under his command, searching for any anomalies in their behavior or physiology. The temple bustled with activity as the Jedi prepared for their secret mission, unaware of how close they were to uncovering a terrible truth. The rain-slicked platforms of Tipoca City gleamed under Kamino's perpetual storms as Shaak Ti arrived under the pretense of inspecting new clone batches. The Kaminoan cloners moved with their characteristic grace, their long necks bending as they explained the cloning process in clinical detail. Shaak Ti listened politely, her Force senses extended to detect any deception or hidden agendas. During a tour of the medical facilities, she noticed a separate area where certain modifications were being made to the clones. "What is the purpose of these procedures?" she asked, her voice carefully neutral. The Kaminoan chief scientist hesitated for a fraction of a second before explaining about the inhibitor chips designed to prevent aggressive behavior. Shaak Ti nodded, but her instincts screamed that something was terribly wrong with this explanation. That night, she used her Jedi abilities to infiltrate the secure medical facility, her movements silent as she accessed the restricted data files. The holographic displays glowed with information as Shaak Ti discovered the truth about the inhibitor chips and their sinister purpose. Order 66 was detailed in the files, a contingency protocol that would compel the clones to view the Jedi as traitors to be eliminated. The Jedi Master felt a chill run down her spine as she realized the depth of the betrayal that had been planned. She quickly copied the data and transmitted it to the Jedi Council using an encrypted channel before erasing any trace of her intrusion. The Kaminoans remained unaware of her discovery as she departed the next morning, her expression carefully composed. Meanwhile, Plo Koon had completed his own investigation, confirming the presence of the inhibitor chips in the clones under his command. The Council now faced a terrible dilemma: remove the chips and potentially lose the war, or keep them and risk certain betrayal. The weight of this decision pressed down on them as they debated their next move in the torchlit council chamber. Master Windu argued forcefully for immediate removal of the chips, his voice tight with anger at the deception. "We cannot fight this war with swords hanging over our necks," he insisted, his dark skin gleaming with sweat in the chamber's dim light. Yoda, however, cautioned against rash action, pointing out that removing the chips might alert their hidden enemy. "Careful we must be," the Ancient Master warned, his ears drooping with concern. After hours of debate, a compromise was reached. They would discreetly remove the chips from key clone commanders, while leaving the rest in place. This risky plan required precise timing and absolute secrecy, with only the most trusted Jedi involved in the operation. The temple's medical facilities were prepared for the delicate procedure, with specialized droids programmed to extract the chips without damaging the clones. The fate of the Jedi Order hung in the balance as they prepared to counteract a betrayal they had not yet been meant to discover. The operation began under the cover of routine medical examinations, with clone commanders reporting for checkups as ordered. The medical droids worked with precision, their mechanical arms extracting the tiny chips from the clones' brains with microscopic accuracy. Commander Cody was among the first to undergo the procedure, his trust in the Jedi making him compliant without question. As the chips were removed, the clones experienced no immediate change, but their minds were now free from the hidden compulsion. The Jedi monitored their reactions carefully, relieved to find no adverse effects from the procedure. Word spread through the ranks as more commanders were treated, their loyalty to the Jedi growing stronger with each passing day. The operation proceeded smoothly for weeks, with hundreds of clone commanders freed from the hidden programming. The Jedi began to feel a sense of hope that they might yet prevail against the dark forces arrayed against them. In the Chancellor's office, Palpatine sensed a disturbance in the Force, a subtle shift in the carefully laid plans he had cultivated for years. His yellow eyes narrowed as he reached out with the dark side, probing for the source of this change. The clones' connection to the inhibitor chips had weakened, their compliance no longer absolute as it had been before. Palpatine's hands clenched into fists as he realized the Jedi had discovered his secret contingency. "They move against me," he hissed to the empty room, his voice distorted by his growing anger. The Sith Lord immediately accelerated his timetable, contacting his separatist allies to prepare for a final offensive. He also summoned Anakin Skywalker to his office, planning to turn the young Jedi against the Order before they could act against him. The Coruscant skyline glittered outside his window like a field of stars oblivious to the darkness gathering within the Chancellor's office. The Jedi Council made their move as Palpatine scrambled to salvage his plans, confronting him in his office with evidence of his betrayal. Mace Windu, Kit Fisto, Sayacetine, and Ajin Kolar stood before the Chancellor, their lightsabers drawn and their expressions grim. "Chancellor Palpatine, you are under arrest for treason against the Republic," Windu declared, his voice echoing in the spacious office. Palpatine's face twisted with rage as he abandoned his disguise, unleashing a torrent of Force lightning at the Jedi Masters. The battle was fierce, but without Anakin as his protector and with the clone commanders freed from Order 66, Palpatine found himself overwhelmed. The Jedi fought with determination, their blades moving in perfect harmony as they pressed their advantage. The clone troopers stood ready, but their commanders had already been alerted to the Chancellor's true nature. The 501 First Legion, led by the freed commander Apo, secured the area, preventing any escape or reinforcement. The galaxy watched in shock as the truth about Palpatine was revealed to the Republic, the Senate voting overwhelmingly to remove him from power. The Jedi Order, having survived the betrayal, worked with the loyal clone commanders to bring the Clone Wars to a swift conclusion. Without Palpatine controlling both sides, the separatist leadership quickly collapsed, ending the conflict that had ravaged the galaxy for years. Anakin Skywalker, having been warned by the Council about Palpatine's manipulations, faced his own temptations but chose to remain loyal to the Jedi. The Order began a period of reflection and reform, addressing the arrogance and complacency that had allowed the Sith to infiltrate the Republic. The clone troopers, now free from their hidden programming, were offered citizenship and opportunities in the rebuilt Republic. Many chose to continue serving alongside the Jedi, their loyalty forged in battle and trust rather than biological programming. The galaxy entered a new era of peace, with the Jedi and clones standing together as guardians of the restored Republic. And in the shadows of the galaxy, the remaining Sith Lords watched and waited, knowing that their time would come again. But for now, the light had prevailed against the darkness. Let's move on to the next what-if theory. What if I told you that Count Dooku's mastery with a lightsaber proved superior to Anakin's raw power during their final duel aboard the Invisible Hand? This alternate timeline reveals how the galaxy might have transformed if the Sith apprentice had defeated the Chosen One, creating a three-way power struggle that would reshape the future of the Clone Wars. The duel aboard the Invisible Hand raged with intensity as blue and red lightsabers clashed in the Chancellor's observation room. Anakin fought with his characteristic aggression, his movements powerful but increasingly predictable to the seasoned Sith Lord. Dooku's elegant Makashi form allowed him to deflect and redirect Anakin's attacks, conserving energy while his opponent exhausted himself. The smell of ozone and burned metal filled the air as their blades locked together, sparks flying in the dimly lit chamber. Palpatine watched from his chair, his expression carefully neutral as he observed the battle between his current and potential apprentice. Obi-Wan lay unconscious nearby, his fate hanging in the balance as the duel reached its climax. Unlike the original timeline, Dooku anticipated Anakin's sudden surge of power, having studied the young Jedi's fighting style in detail. The Sith Lord sidestepped the furious assault, using the Force to push Anakin off balance and create an opening. His red lightsaber struck with precision, disarming Anakin and sending his blue blade skittering across the floor. Before Anakin could recover, Dooku unleashed a powerful wave of Force energy that slammed him against the far wall. The young Jedi collapsed in a heap, unconscious and defeated as Dooku stood over him with cold satisfaction. "Well done, Lord Tyrannus," Palpatine said, his voice dripping with false praise as he gestured toward the fallen Jedi. "Finish him." Dooku hesitated for a fraction of a second, sensing something amiss in his master's tone. The Count's sharp mind had already begun to piece together Palpatine's true intentions regarding Anakin. Dooku's eyes narrowed as he considered Palpatine's words, recognizing the subtle implication that he was merely a placeholder for Anakin. The Sith Lord's pride would not allow him to be so easily discarded, especially not for a volatile Jedi half his age. "I believe the Jedi would make a more valuable prisoner, my lord," Dooku replied smoothly, his voice betraying none of his inner turmoil. Palpatine's expression tightened almost imperceptibly, his yellow eyes flashing with annoyance at this disobedience. "As you wish," the Chancellor conceded, though his mind was already racing with contingency plans. Dooku summoned Magna Guards to secure Anakin, their mechanical arms binding the young Jedi with unyielding strength. The Count watched as his prize was taken away, his mind already formulating a new strategy that would ensure his survival. The invisible hand continued its journey through hyperspace, carrying aboard it a secret that would change the course of the war. Anakin awoke to the cold, sterile environment of a separatist prison cell, his head throbbing from the Force attack that had rendered him unconscious. The young Jedi tested his restraints, finding himself bound by energy cuffs that suppressed his connection to the Force. The cell was windowless, its durasteel walls reflecting his own pale face back at him in the dim lighting. Days passed in isolation, with only the occasional delivery of nutrient paste breaking the monotony of his captivity. Anakin's mind raced with thoughts of Padmé, Obi-Wan, and the Republic, wondering what had become of them after his capture. The silence of his prison was broken only by the sound of his own breathing and the distant hum of the ship's engines. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the cell door slid open to reveal Count Dooku standing in the corridor. The Sith Lord's expression was unreadable as he entered the cell, the door closing behind him with a definitive hiss. "You have great potential, young Skywalker," Dooku began, his voice calm and measured as he studied his captive. Anakin spat on the floor in response, his eyes burning with defiance despite his vulnerable position. Dooku merely smiled, unperturbed by the Jedi's insolence as he continued to speak. "The Jedi Order has constrained your power, limiting your understanding of the Force with their narrow-minded code." Anakin listened in silence, though his expression remained hostile as Dooku expounded upon the limitations of Jedi teachings. The Sith Lord spoke of power, of knowledge forbidden to the Jedi, of the ability to shape the galaxy according to one's own will. These words struck a chord within Anakin, who had often felt constrained by the Council's restrictions and their refusal to acknowledge his abilities. Dooku noticed the subtle shift in Anakin's demeanor and pressed his advantage, appealing to the young Jedi's ambition and desire for recognition. "The Jedi fear your power because they cannot control it," Dooku continued, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "They see you as a threat, not as the savior you could become." Anakin's jaw tightened at these words, recognizing the truth in them despite his reluctance to admit it. Dooku produced a datapad, displaying images of the Jedi Council discussing Anakin behind his back, their expressions doubtful and concerned. "Even your friend Obi-Wan questions your readiness, your commitment to their code," the Sith Lord lied smoothly, manipulating images to support his narrative. Anakin's heart ached at this apparent betrayal, his mind clouded by doubt and resentment. Dooku moved closer, his presence imposing yet strangely compelling as he offered Anakin a different path. "Join me, and I will teach you the true nature of the Force, unfiltered by Jedi dogma." The offer hung in the air between them, tempting and dangerous as Anakin struggled with his conflicting emotions. Meanwhile, on Coruscant, Palpatine wrestled with the dilemma of whether to rescue Anakin or allow Dooku to keep him. The Sith Lord's plans had been disrupted by Dooku's unexpected decision to spare Anakin's life. Palpatine's agents reported that Dooku was attempting to turn Anakin against him, creating a dangerous complication in his carefully orchestrated scheme. The Chancellor's office was bathed in the red light of sunset as he contemplated his next move, his yellow eyes gleaming with calculation. "We must rescue Skywalker at once," Palpatine declared to his closest advisors, presenting himself as a concerned leader rather than a Sith master. The Republic fleet was dispatched to track the Invisible Hand, their mission presented as a rescue operation for a captured hero. Palpatine knew that Dooku would anticipate this move, but he had contingency plans within contingency plans. The game between the two Sith Lords had entered a new phase, with Anakin as the unwitting pawn in their struggle for power. Back aboard the Invisible Hand, Dooku continued his subtle manipulation of Anakin, gradually eroding the young Jedi's resistance. The Sith Lord spoke of his own disillusionment with the Jedi Order, of the corruption he had witnessed within the Republic. "Oh, I left the Jedi because I saw the truth. They serve only themselves, not the people they claim to protect." Dooku azins, his voice filled with conviction. Anakin found himself nodding in agreement, recalling instances where the Council had put politics above the needs of ordinary citizens. Dooku noticed this change and pressed his advantage, offering Anakin small freedoms as rewards for his cooperation. The energy cuffs were removed for short periods, allowing Anakin to feel the Force flowing through him once more. Dooku even allowed him access to a lightsaber, watching with interest as Anakin practiced forms he had learned from Obi-Wan. The Sith Lord began teaching him Makashi techniques, praising his natural talent and quick learning ability. The Republic fleet finally caught up to the Invisible Hand above the planet Otapau, their weapons armed and ready to rescue Anakin. Dooku sensed their approach through the Force and prepared to make his escape, taking Anakin with him as his new apprentice. "The time has come to choose, young Skywalker," Dooku declared, his voice urgent as the ship rocked from the first volleys of Republic turbo laser fire. Anakin stood at a crossroads, his loyalty to the Jedi warring with his resentment toward the Council and his growing admiration for Dooku's power. The ship's alarms blared as the battle intensified, the smell of smoke and electrical fires filling the corridors. Dooku extended his hand to Anakin, offering him a place at his side as they faced the coming conflict together. "Join me, and together we will overthrow both the Jedi and my former master, creating a new order in the galaxy." Anakin's hand trembled as he reached toward Dooku, his decision hanging in the balance as the ship groaned around them. And in that moment of choice, the galaxy itself seemed to hold its breath, waiting to see which path the Chosen One would take and how his decision would reshape the balance of power between the three powerful figures now vying for control of the Republic's destiny. Let's move on to the next what-if theory. What if I told you that Anakin Skywalker never fell in love with Padmé Amidala, changing the very foundation of his destiny and the galaxy's fate? This alternate timeline reveals how the Chosen One might have walked a different path, one where ambition rather than attachment became his downfall. The ripple effects of this single change would transform not only Anakin's future but the entire course of the Clone Wars and beyond. The first meeting between the young Jedi and the former Queen of Naboo was marked by polite professionalism rather than instant attraction. Anakin saw Padmé as a respected leader and ally, his admiration focused on her political acumen rather than her beauty. Padmé, in turn, viewed the Jedi Padawan as a promising warrior and protector, nothing more. Their interactions during the Battle of Naboo were cordial but distant, with no underlying tension or unspoken feelings. The Force flowed between them as comrades in arms, not as potential lovers drawn together by fate. The years that followed saw Anakin dedicating himself completely to his Jedi training, with no romantic distractions to pull his focus from the Force. His natural talents flourished under Obi-Wan's guidance, his connection to the Force growing stronger with each passing day. The Clone Wars became his crucible, transforming the promising Padawan into a legendary Jedi general feared by separatist forces. Battle after battle, Anakin led the 501st Legion to victory, his tactical brilliance and unmatched combat skills earning him the nickname the Hero with No Fear. Smell of blaster fire and the sound of clashing lightsabers became his daily reality as he pushed himself to greater heights of achievement. Medals and commendations filled his quarters in the Jedi Temple, tangible proof of his value to the Republic. Yet despite his success, Anakin found himself increasingly isolated, his emotional connections limited to his Jedi brothers and the clone troopers under his command. The temple halls felt emptier each night as he returned from yet another victorious campaign. Palpatine watched Anakin's rise with keen interest, adjusting his manipulation tactics to suit this different version of the Chosen One. Without Padmé as leverage, the Sith Lord focused on appealing to Anakin's ambition and desire for recognition. The Jedi Council fails to appreciate your true potential, my boy, Palpatine would whisper during their private meetings in the Chancellor's office. Anakin would nod in agreement, his frustration with the Council's restrictions growing with each passing month. The Jedi Masters continued to treat him as a talented but reckless warrior, never fully trusting his judgment or granting him the rank of Master. This constant denial of recognition ate at Anakin, fueling a resentment that Palpatine carefully nurtured. The Chancellor would share tales of Sith knowledge and power, hinting at abilities far beyond what the Jedi taught. These conversations planted seeds of doubt in Anakin's mind about the limitations of Jedi teachings. The Jedi Council's chambers echoed with debates about Anakin's future, his name frequently mentioned but always with reservations. His power is great, but his arrogance grows concerning, Mace Windu stated during one such meeting, his expression troubled. Yoda nodded in agreement, his ancient eyes filled with wisdom and worry about the path their most powerful member was walking. Anakin stood outside the council chambers sometimes, listening through the doors as they discussed his limitations and failures. Each word of criticism struck like a physical blow, reinforcing his belief that the Jedi did not truly value him. The temple's meditation rooms offered little solace, as Anakin found himself increasingly unable to find peace through traditional Jedi methods. His connection to the Force remained strong, but it felt constrained by Jedi doctrine and council restrictions. Palpatine's offers of forbidden knowledge became more tempting as Anakin's frustration with the Order grew. The Clone Wars raged on, with Anakin's reputation as a brilliant military strategist continuing to grow. Republic holonews broadcasts celebrated his victories, showing footage of the hero with no fear, leading his troops to impossible triumphs. Ordinary citizens across the galaxy looked up to him as a symbol of hope and strength against the separatist threat. Yet, within the Jedi Order, Anakin felt increasingly unappreciated, his achievements overshadowed by concerns about his methods and temperament. Palpatine seized upon this growing divide, subtly suggesting that Anakin deserved greater authority and recognition than the Jedi were willing to grant. A warrior of your caliber should be leading the Jedi Council, not answering to it, the Chancellor murmured during a private audience. These words resonated deeply with Anakin, who had begun to believe that his power entitled him to greater respect and position. The dark side called to him not through fear of loss, but through promises of the recognition and power he craved. Anakin's fall from grace began not with a desperate attempt to save a loved one, but with a calculated decision to seize the power he believed he deserved. The Jedi Council's final refusal to grant him the rank of Master, despite his unparalleled service to the Republic, became the breaking point. That night, Anakin stood before the temple's panoramic windows, looking out at the city planet that had become his home and prison. The lights of Coruscant glittered below like fallen stars, each one representing a life he had sworn to protect but now felt entitled to rule. Palpatine's offer to teach him the ways of the Sith no longer seemed like a betrayal of everything he stood for, but rather a logical next step in his ascent. The dark side promised not just power but the recognition and authority the Jedi had consistently denied him. Anakin's breathing grew shallow as he made his decision, his blue eyes reflecting the city lights like chips of ice. The path ahead was clear, illuminated not by the light of the Jedi, but by the seductive glow of the dark side. The transformation began gradually, with Anakin secretly studying Sith texts provided by Palpatine during the late hours of the night. His quarters in the Jedi Temple became a sanctuary of forbidden knowledge, with datapads containing dark side teachings hidden beneath official Jedi documents. The power he discovered through these studies felt intoxicating, filling the void left by the Jedi's restrictive teachings. Anakin began using dark side techniques in battle, justifying their use as necessary for victory against the separatist threat. No one questioned the increased brutality of his methods, attributing it to the stresses of war rather than a turn toward darkness. The clone troopers under his command remained loyal, their conditioning overriding any concerns about their general's changing demeanor. Only Obi-Wan seemed to sense the growing darkness in his former Padawan, though he could not identify its source. The bond between master and apprentice strained under the weight of secrets and lies, with Anakin withdrawing further into his ambition-fueled isolation. The final confrontation came not on Mustafar but in the Jedi Temple itself, as Anakin's ambition could no longer be contained. Palpatine revealed his true identity as Darth Sidious, offering Anakin a place at his side as his apprentice in a new Sith order. Unlike the original timeline, Anakin did not hesitate or struggle with his decision, his path toward darkness having been paved by months of resentment and ambition. "I will be more powerful than any Jedi," Anakin declared, his eyes already beginning to yellow with dark side corruption. The Jedi Temple became a battlefield as Anakin turned against the order that had raised him, his lightsaber striking down those who had once been his brothers and sisters. The smell of ozone and burned flesh filled the temple halls as Anakin carved a path of destruction through his former home. The fall was complete, not driven by love or fear, but by the cold ambition that had been nurtured by Palpatine's careful manipulation. The galaxy would soon tremble before the power of Darth Vader, a Sith Lord born not of tragic love, but of ruthless ambition and the desire for recognition at any cost. Let's move on to the next what-if theory. What if I told you that General Grievous escaped Obi-Wan's trap on Utapau, surviving the war to become a third power in the galaxy? This alternate timeline reveals how the cyborg general's continued presence would have transformed the political landscape, creating a persistent threat independent of both Republic and Empire. The sinkhole city of Paw City on Utapau echoed with the sounds of battle as Obi-Wan Kenobi confronted General Grievous in the fateful duel that would have ended the separatist leader's life in the original timeline. Unlike before, Grievous had sensed the Jedi Master's approach through his network of spies, allowing him to prepare a contingency plan. The cyborg general fought with calculated precision, his 4 lightsabers moving in deadly patterns as he gradually retreated toward a hidden escape route. Obi-Wan pressed his attack, believing he was driving the separatist leader into a corner, unaware of the trap within a trap. The smell of ozone and burning metal filled the air as their blades clashed, illuminating the dimly lit hangar with flashes of blue and green. Grievous's mechanical eyes glowed with cold intelligence as he executed his escape plan, triggering explosions that created chaos and confusion. The Utapau sky filled with smoke and debris as Grievous fled aboard his personal starfighter, the Soulless One, leaving behind a small contingent of droids to cover his retreat. Obi-Wan watched in frustration as the ship disappeared into the upper atmosphere, realizing too late that he had been outmaneuvered. The cyborg general had not only escaped, but had managed to steal valuable Republic technology, including prototype shield generators and encrypted military codes. These spoils of war would prove invaluable as Grievous established his new power base beyond the reach of both Republic and Separatist forces. The Soulless One jumped to hyperspace, carrying Grievous to a secret rendezvous point where a small fleet of loyal warships awaited his command. The general's metallic hands clenched with satisfaction as he reviewed the stolen data, his mind already formulating plans for the future. The death of Count Dooku, rather than ending Grievous's military career, had actually freed him from Sith oversight, allowing him to pursue his own agenda. The stars streaked past his viewport as the cyborg general contemplated his next move, his strategic mind already calculating the optimal path to power. The Separatist Council was shocked to receive a transmission from Grievous, announcing that he would be taking command of their remaining forces following Dooku's death. The corporate leaders and alien politicians who comprised the council had assumed the cyborg general would be easily controlled, but they now found themselves dealing with a military dictator who answered to no one. Grievous established his headquarters on the remote planet of Kali, his homeworld, where he began rebuilding the Separatist military according to his own specifications. The planet's rugged terrain and hostile environment provided perfect cover for his growing military installations, which were carved into mountains and hidden beneath dense forests. The sound of construction droids and machinery filled the air as Grievous transformed his homeworld into a fortress world, impervious to Republic invasion. The cyborg general personally oversaw the training of elite droid units, his tactical brilliance shaping them into a formidable fighting force loyal only to him. Republic intelligence reports spoke of strange new droid designs and military strategies that bore Grievous's distinctive signature, causing concern among the Jedi Council. The Clone Wars continued to rage, but now with three distinct powers vying for control of the galaxy. Grievous's intelligence network eventually uncovered evidence of Chancellor Palpatine's dual identity as Darth Sidious, revealing the true puppet master behind both sides of the conflict. The cyborg general felt a surge of anger at this manipulation, realizing that he had been merely a pawn in the Sith's grand design. Rather than revealing this information to the Separatist Council, Grievous chose to keep it to himself, recognizing the strategic advantage this knowledge provided. He began secretly preparing for a future confrontation with the Sith Lord, modifying his droid armies with specialized weapons designed to counter Force users. The laboratories on Kali buzzed with activity as scientists worked to develop technology that could neutralize Jedi and Sith abilities, creating a level playing field for Grievous's forces. The cyborg general spent hours in meditation chambers of his own design, enhancing his tactical abilities and preparing himself mentally for the challenges ahead. His organic components ached with a strange mix of emotions: anger at being manipulated, satisfaction at his growing power, and a cold determination to forge his own destiny. The Force itself seemed to recoil from his presence, as if recognizing the threat he posed to both light and dark sides. As the Clone Wars drew to a close with the Republic's victory, Grievous executed his contingency plan, disappearing with a significant portion of the Separatist fleet and resources. The galaxy celebrated the end of the war, unaware that a new threat was gathering strength in the shadows. Grievous established hidden bases throughout the Outer Rim, using his knowledge of secret hyperspace lanes known only to the highest-ranking Separatist officials. These bases were self-sufficient fortresses, each capable of producing droids, starships, and weapons independently, making them nearly impossible to locate and destroy. The cyborg general traveled between these bases in his flagship, the Malevolence II, an upgraded version of his former command vessel with enhanced stealth capabilities and devastating firepower. His forces grew in number and sophistication, incorporating stolen Imperial technology and Grievous's own ruthless innovations. The Empire, focused on consolidating power and eliminating the Jedi threat, initially dismissed reports of Grievous's continued existence as Separatist propaganda. This underestimation would prove costly as the cyborg general began striking at Imperial supply lines and outposts, testing the Empire's defenses and gathering valuable intelligence. The rise of the Empire created new opportunities for Grievous, who positioned himself as a viable alternative to Imperial tyranny for those dissatisfied with Palpatine's rule. Rebel cells began forming across the galaxy, and while most sought to restore the Republic, some found common cause with Grievous's anti-Imperial agenda. The cyborg general, ever the pragmatist, saw the value in these temporary alliances, providing weapons and support to rebel groups that shared his immediate goals of weakening Imperial power. These uneasy partnerships were fraught with tension, as the rebels struggled with the moral implications of working with a former Separatist leader known for his brutality. Grievous, for his part, maintained his distance, never fully trusting the rebels but recognizing their usefulness as pawns in his larger strategy. The galaxy became a complex web of shifting alliances, with the Empire, the Rebellion, and Grievous's forces vying for dominance. Ordinary citizens found themselves caught between three powerful factions, each promising a different vision for the future but all demanding unquestioning loyalty. The smell of fear and uncertainty permeated spaceports and marketplaces, as people wondered which power would ultimately prevail. Grievous's military campaigns grew increasingly bold, with his forces striking at key Imperial worlds and disrupting the Empire's ability to maintain control. The cyborg general developed a reputation for unpredictability, sometimes attacking with overwhelming force, other times employing subtle sabotage and psychological warfare. Imperial fleets were redeployed to counter this new threat, stretching the Empire's resources thin and creating opportunities for the rebellion to grow stronger. Palpatine, now Emperor, found himself increasingly frustrated by this persistent thorn in his side, dispatching his most capable commanders to hunt down Grievous without success. The cyborg general seemed to anticipate every move, his strategic genius allowing him to stay one step ahead of Imperial forces. Rumors spread of his enhanced abilities, with some claiming he had incorporated even more cybernetic enhancements, while others whispered that he had somehow learned to harness the Force himself. The truth was more complex. Grievous had indeed found ways to counter Force users through technology and tactics, creating a unique challenge for both Jedi and Sith. His forces became known as the Null Legion, soldiers specifically trained to fight against Force-sensitive opponents, their armor and weapons designed to negate or resist Jedi and Sith abilities. The galaxy settled into an uneasy stalemate, with the Empire controlling the core worlds, the Rebellion gaining strength in the Mid-Rim, and Grievous's forces dominating vast stretches of the Outer Rim. This three-way Cold War created a fragile balance of power, with each faction carefully watching the others, waiting for an opportunity to gain advantage. Grievous, from his fortress world of Kelly, continued to build his military might, his eyes always fixed on the ultimate prize, control of the galaxy itself. The cyborg general spent long hours studying star charts and intelligence reports, his mechanical mind processing countless variables and potential outcomes. He knew that time was on his side, as both the Empire and the Rebellion exhausted themselves in their ongoing conflict. The sound of marching droid feet echoed through the corridors of his command center, a constant reminder of the power at his disposal. Grievous looked out at the stars from his observation deck, his reflection a strange amalgam of machine and organic components, a living symbol of the new order he sought to create. And in the darkness between the stars, the galaxy held its breath, wondering which of these three powers would ultimately prevail, and what the future would hold for those caught in the middle of this struggle for dominance. Let's move on to the next what-if theory. What if I told you that Darth Vader never wavered in his loyalty to the Emperor, becoming the perfect Sith apprentice and ensuring the Empire's eternal dominion? This alternate timeline reveals how complete devotion to the dark side could have transformed Anakin Skywalker into an unstoppable force, crushing all hope before it could ignite. The volcanic planet of Mustafar burned beneath him as Vader knelt before Palpatine, his mechanical body radiating pure dark side energy without trace of conflict. The red and black helmet tilted upward, its lenses reflecting the flames like miniature suns as Vader pledged eternal service to his new master. "What is thy bidding, my master?" Vader asked, his voice a mechanical monotone devoid of the emotional turmoil that had once plagued him. Palpatine smiled with satisfaction, sensing the absolute commitment in his apprentice, a perfect weapon forged from grief and rage. The transformation was complete, with no lingering attachment to Padmé or hesitation about his new path. The Sith had claimed their ultimate enforcer, unburdened by conscience or doubt. Vader's hunt for the remaining Jedi began immediately, his methods growing more ruthless with each passing day. The Jedi Temple became his hunting ground, its once sacred halls echoing with the sounds of blaster fire and dying screams. Younglings hiding in the library were discovered without mercy, their Force sensitivity making them threats to be eliminated. The smell of ozone and burned flesh filled the corridors as Vader carved through the raw he had once called family. No Jedi escaped his notice, his connection to the dark side allowing him to sense their presence across the galaxy. Master Yoda's escape to Dagobah was detected within days, Vader's forces hunting the Green Jedi Master relentlessly until he was finally cornered and destroyed. Obi-Wan Kenobi's exile on Tatooine proved equally brief, Vader tracking his former master through their lingering Force bond and ending his life in the Jundland wastes. The Jedi Order was eradicated completely, its memories systematically erased from Imperial records. Without internal conflict to distract him, Vader's power in the dark side grew exponentially, surpassing even Palpatine's expectations. Hours spent in meditation chambers deep within Imperial palaces allowed him to explore depths of the Force few Sith had ever reached. The ability to crush starships with a thought became routine, as did the power to sense disturbances across the galaxy with pinpoint accuracy. Vader developed new techniques, blending Jedi knowledge with Sith teachings to create devastating combat styles that no opponent could withstand. The Emperor watched with both pride and concern as his apprentice grew stronger, wondering if he had created a weapon too powerful to control. Vader's black armor became a symbol of terror across the galaxy, its very silhouette causing planets to surrender without resistance. The Force itself seemed to bend to his will, the light side growing dimmer with each act of darkness he committed. The Chosen One had indeed brought balance to the Force by eliminating the light entirely. The discovery of Luke and Leia's existence came through Imperial intelligence reports rather than familial intuition, Vader viewing them only as potential Jedi threats. The boy on Tatooine showed remarkable Force sensitivity, his pod racing skills and intuitive piloting, drawing the attention of Imperial informants. The girl on Alderaan displayed similar abilities, her passionate speeches in the junior legislative program revealing an unnatural charisma that suggested Force influence. Vader studied the reports with cold detachment, seeing not his children but two more lights to be extinguished. They must be eliminated before they can be trained, Vader declared to the Emperor, his voice devoid of emotion. Palpatine agreed, though he secretly wondered if these children might one day replace Vader should the apprentice grow too powerful. The hunt began immediately, with Imperial forces descending on Tatooine and Alderaan to capture or kill the Force-sensitive youths. The Lars homestead was surrounded by stormtroopers, its occupants questioned relentlessly about the boy who lived among them. Luke Skywalker's capture came during a routine Imperial inspection of his moisture farm, his attempts to resist futile against trained soldiers. The boy was transported to Coruscant for questioning, his strong connection to the Force confirming Vader's suspicions about his potential. Vader personally interrogated the boy, his methods brutal and efficient as he sought to determine if others had been training the youth. Leia Organa's capture followed shortly after, as she attempted to use her diplomatic status to hide her involvement with early rebel sympathizers. The twins were brought before the Emperor, their fear palpable as they faced the two most powerful beings in the galaxy. The Force is strong with them, Palpatine mused, studying the children with cold interest. Vader nodded in agreement, his mechanical breathing the only sound in the throne room as he awaited his master's decision. The twins were deemed too dangerous to live, their execution scheduled for the following day as a warning to any who would oppose Imperial rule. The Empire grew stronger under Vader's unwavering loyalty, his military genius combined with dark side powers creating an unstoppable force. Planets that might have resisted Imperial control surrendered immediately upon learning that Vader himself would lead the pacification fleet. The Death Star was completed ahead of schedule, its superweapon tested on Alderaan as punishment for the Organa family's treachery. The planet's destruction sent shockwaves through the galaxy, eliminating any thought of rebellion before it could take root. Vader's black fist tightened around the galaxy, his rule absolute and unquestioned as he enforced the Emperor's will without hesitation. The Imperial Navy expanded under his strategic direction, its ships becoming more numerous and technologically advanced with each passing year. The few who dared to speak against Imperial rule disappeared in the night, taken by Vader's personal agents never to be seen again. The galaxy settled into an era of oppressive peace, maintained through fear and the overwhelming power of the Sith. The rebellion never truly formed in this timeline, its leaders identified and eliminated before they could make contact with each other. Bail Organa's execution was broadcast across the holonet as a warning to any who would harbor treasonous thoughts. Mon Mothma disappeared shortly after speaking out against Imperial policies, her fate unknown but assumed to be final. Garm Bella Bliss was killed in a suspicious accident when his personal shuttle exploded shortly after takeoff. Without these central figures to unite them, isolated resistance cells remained scattered and ineffective, easily crushed by Imperial forces. The people of the galaxy learned to keep their heads down and their thoughts to themselves, surviving under Imperial rule through silence and compliance. The concept of freedom faded from memory, replaced by the security of Imperial order and the terrible price of defiance. The Empire's power grew absolute, its control extending to every corner of known space without challenge. The galaxy settled into an eternal darkness under Sith rule, with no hope of redemption or rebellion to light the way. Vader stood at Palpatine's side as they surveyed their domain from the Imperial Palace on Coruscant, their power unquestioned and unchallenged. The stars themselves seemed dimmer in this timeline, as if the light side of the Force had been extinguished completely. The few remaining Force-sensitive individuals were either recruited into the Inquisitorius or eliminated as potential threat. The Jedi became nothing more than a cautionary tale told to disobedient children, their memory twisted by Imperial propaganda to portray them as traitors and villains. The Sith had achieved what generations of their predecessors had only dreamed of: complete and total control of the galaxy. Vader's mechanical breathing echoed through the empty halls of power, a constant reminder of the price of this perfect order. And in the darkness between the stars there were no whispers of hope, no dreams of freedom, only the eternal silence of a galaxy forever under the control of the Sith. Let's move on to the next what-if theory. What if I told you that Yaddle's presence on the Jedi Council throughout the Clone Wars created ripples of wisdom that altered the galaxy's darkest hour? This alternate timeline reveals how the ancient Jedi Master's unique connection to the Force and her active role in the war might have prevented the Order's near extinction. The Jedi Council chambers felt different with Yaddle's continued presence, her small stature belying the immense power she commanded through the Force. While other Masters debated strategy in the war room, Yaddle spent hours in meditation, her three-fingered hands tracing patterns in the air as she sensed disturbances others missed. The Room of 1,000 Fountains became her sanctuary, where the sound of flowing water helped her perceive the dark side's growing influence like a poison spreading through the galaxy. Yaddle's unique perspective complemented Yoda's perfectly. Where he saw the forest, she saw each individual tree, each life hanging in the balance. Her voice, though rarely raised in council meetings, carried weight that could silence even the most heated arguments. The Force flowed through her differently, more like a gentle stream than Yoda's raging river, yet just as powerful in its own way. Yaddle took special interest in Anakin Skywalker's training, sensing the turbulence in his spirit that others struggled to understand. She would often join his meditation sessions, her calm presence helping to soothe the storms of emotion that raged within him. "The Force is not a weapon, young one," she would whisper, her large eyes meeting his with profound understanding. "It is the breath between heartbeats, the silence between thoughts." These teachings resonated with Anakin in ways the Council's strictures never could, offering him a path to balance that didn't require suppressing his emotions entirely. Yaddle recognized the trauma of his slavery and worked with him to heal those wounds through the Force, rather than simply demanding he overcome them. Her methods were unorthodox, sometimes taking him to the lower levels of Coruscant to connect with the living Force among the planet's forgotten inhabitants. Anakin found himself looking forward to these sessions, his defenses lowering in the presence of someone who seemed to truly understand his struggles. As the Clone Wars intensified, Yaddle formed a specialized task force of Jedi Knights, focused on uncovering the dark side's influence behind the conflict. Her team operated independently from the main war effort, following leads that seemed insignificant to others but revealed patterns of manipulation to Yaddle's perceptive mind. They traveled to forgotten worlds and ancient temples, seeking knowledge that might explain the Sith's return. On the planet Maraband, Yaddle discovered holocrons containing prophecies about the Chosen One's role in bringing balance, prophecies that suggested balance might require the Jedi Order's transformation rather than the Sith's destruction. These findings troubled her deeply, as they implied the Council's rigid adherence to tradition might be preventing the very balance they sought. Yaddle shared her discoveries only with Yoda and Mace Windu, sensing that the full Council was not ready to hear such uncomfortable truths. The weight of this knowledge pressed down on her small shoulders as she continued her investigations, determined to uncover the full extent of the Sith's plan. Yaddle's unique connection to the Force allowed her to sense the inhibitor chips in the clone troopers' brains, long before others suspected their existence. During a meditation session with Commander Cody, she felt a strange blockage in his Force signature, like a wall where there should have been openness. Her investigation led her to Kamino, where she used diplomatic credentials to access the cloning facilities under the pretense of inspecting the troopers' mental health. The Kaminoans' evasive answers only confirmed her suspicions, prompting her to conduct a deeper investigation using her Jedi abilities. In the dead of night, Yaddle infiltrated the genetic laboratory, her small size allowing her to move unnoticed through the sterile corridors. What she discovered chilled her to the bone, detailed files about Order 66 and the chip's true purpose as a failsafe against the Jedi. She copied the data and transmitted it to Yoda using an encrypted channel, her heart heavy with the terrible knowledge of the betrayal to come. The Kaminoans remained unaware of her discovery as she departed the next morning, her expression carefully composed but her mind racing with plans to counteract this threat. With the truth about Order 66 revealed, Yaddle worked secretly with Yoda and a few trusted Jedi to disable the inhibitor chips in key clone commanders. The operation required extraordinary precision and secrecy, conducted under the guise of routine medical examinations for clone officers. The Yaddle's healing abilities proved invaluable, allowing her to remove the chips without damaging the clones' brains or alerting them to the procedure. Commander Cody was among the first to be freed, his loyalty to the Jedi remaining intact when the terrible order was finally given. The Yaddle also established safe havens for younglings and initiates, using forgotten Jedi pathways and ancient temples known only to the Order's most learned historians. She taught the children techniques to hide their Force sensitivity, creating a network of hidden Jedi who could survive the coming purge. When Order 66 was finally executed, Yaddle was ready, having already evacuated the most vulnerable Jedi to these secret locations. The temple still fell, and many Jedi died, but the Order's heart continued to beat in hidden corners of the galaxy. In the aftermath of the Jedi Purge, Yaddle became a symbol of hope for those who resisted the Empire's tyranny. She moved through the galaxy like a whisper, appearing briefly to offer guidance and disappearing before Imperial forces could respond. The early rebellion found in her a wise mentor who understood both the need to fight and the importance of preserving Jedi wisdom. Yaddle established secret schools where Force-sensitive children could learn the ways of the Jedi without drawing Imperial attention. Her teachings emphasized balance, healing, and the living Force qualities that would be essential in rebuilding what the Empire had destroyed. Though she rarely took direct action against Imperial forces, her influence was felt across the galaxy as she guided others to find their own strength. The legend of the small Jedi Master who survived the Purge spread like wildfire, giving courage to those who had lost hope. Yaddle understood that true victory would not come through destroying the Empire, but through nurturing the light that would eventually outshine its darkness. The galaxy slowly began to heal under Yaddle's quiet guidance, as the seeds she had planted during the darkest years began to sprout. Force-sensitive children, trained in her hidden schools, grew into wise leaders who would help shape the future. Rebellion, strengthened by her wisdom and the Jedi she had preserved, found new ways to challenge Imperial power without sacrificing their principles. Yaddle watched from the shadows as the balance she had worked so hard to maintain began to return to the Force. Her small hands often rested on ancient texts as she contemplated the long road ahead, knowing that true healing would take generations. The twins, Luke and Leia, found their way to her eventually, drawn by the same Force that had guided their parents. Under Yaddle's tutelage, they learned not just how to fight, but how to heal, how to balance light and dark within themselves. And as the twin suns rose over a galaxy beginning to awaken from its long nightmare, Yaddle smiled, knowing that her survival had indeed changed everything, creating a future where hope could flourish once more. Let's move on to the next what-if theory. What if I told you that Obi-Wan Kenobi and Darth Maul were stranded together on a remote planet, forcing mortal enemies into an uneasy alliance that would change them both? This alternate timeline reveals how two warriors from opposite sides of the Force might find common ground when survival demands cooperation. The debris field around the planet, Vancor, glittered with shattered starship fragments as Obi-Wan's Jedi cruiser crashed into the dense jungle below. Maul's scimitar had been critically damaged in the same battle, sending both ships spiraling toward the unforgiving surface. The impact threw Obi-Wan against his restraint harness, his vision blurring as smoke filled the cockpit. Nearby, Maul clawed his way from his own wreckage, his yellow eyes scanning the unfamiliar terrain with predatory focus. The humid air smelled of alien flora and ozone as both survivors emerged, their lightsabers instinctively drawn when they spotted each other. The jungle seemed to hold its breath as two ancient enemies faced each other once more. The red and blue blades clashed immediately, illuminating the clearing with violent light as Obi-Wan and Maul reignited their years-long feud. "Your luck has run out, Kenobi," Maul snarled, his mechanical legs whirring as he pressed his attack with relentless fury. Obi-Wan parried each strike with practiced calm, his defensive form holding against the Sith Lord's aggressive assault. The duel raged through the jungle, disturbing strange bird-like creatures that scattered into the canopy above. Neither combatant noticed the ground beneath them growing increasingly unstable until it gave way, sending both warriors tumbling into a deep ravine. The fall separated them from their weapons, leaving Obi-Wan and Maul injured and weaponless in the darkness below. The sound of rushing water echoed through the cavern as they struggled to their feet, hostility momentarily replaced by mutual assessment. The jungle above seemed distant now, replaced by the immediate challenge of survival in this underground world. Days passed in the subterranean realm, as Obi-Wan and Maul navigated treacherous underground rivers and bioluminescent caverns. Their initial hostility gradually gave way to a tense truce when they discovered the planet was inhabited by territorial predators that hunted in coordinated packs. The first attack came without warning, as serpentine creatures with multiple rows of teeth emerged from the underground river, forcing the pair to fight back-to-back against the common threat. Maul's ferocity combined with Obi-Wan's tactical thinking created an unexpectedly effective defense against the creatures. "We need to find the surface," Obi-Wan stated after the attack, examining a deep gash on Maul's arm with clinical detachment. The Sith Lord reluctantly allowed the Jedi to treat his wound, his pride warring with the practical need for medical attention. The caverns echoed with their uneasy footsteps as they began searching for an exit, their temporary alliance born of necessity rather than trust. The underground world seemed endless, its winding passages and hidden dangers testing both warriors' endurance and skills. The journey through the planet's depths became a crucible that forged an unlikely understanding between the two enemies. During rest periods in sheltered caverns, they engaged in philosophical debates about the nature of the Force that revealed surprising common ground. The Jedi deny their passions, yet passion is what gives the Force its power, Maul argued, his voice echoing in the chamber. Obi-Wan considered this carefully before responding. "Passion without discipline leads to destruction, but discipline without passion leads to stagnation." These conversations often lasted hours, with both warriors finding intellectual stimulation in their opponent's perspective. Maul shared insights about Sith philosophy and Palpatine's grand design that helped Obi-Wan understand the true scope of the threat facing the galaxy. In turn, Obi-Wan's calm wisdom and unwavering principles began to affect Maul's worldview, planting seeds of doubt about his life of vengeance. The bioluminescent fungi cast an eerie glow on their faces as they talked, enemies finding unexpected commonality in the darkness. The planet itself seemed to test them, with increasingly dangerous challenges that required complete cooperation to survive. A cave-in separated them from their supplies, forcing Maul to use his strength to clear rubble, while Obi-Wan used the Force to stabilize the structure. Later, they encountered a chamber filled with toxic spores that required Obi-Wan to create a protective bubble using the Force while Maul navigated them through the treacherous terrain. These trials created a grudging respect between the two warriors, though neither would admit it openly. Maul found himself questioning the Sith path for the first time, wondering if a life defined solely by hatred and revenge was truly fulfilling. Obi-Wan, in turn, began to see Maul not as a monster but as a being shaped by tragedy and manipulation, much like Anakin. The Force itself seemed to respond to their changing dynamic, the dark and light sides finding an unusual balance in their presence. Their journey through the planet's depths became a metaphor for their internal journeys, each step taking them closer to some fundamental truth about themselves. After weeks underground, they finally found an exit that led to the surface, emerging onto a plateau overlooking a vast desert landscape. The twin suns of Vancor beat down on them as they stood at the precipice, the rescue beacon from Maul's ship finally receiving a response. A separatist shuttle appeared on the horizon, coming to retrieve their leader as planned. "This changes nothing between us, Kenobi," Maul declared, though his voice lacked its usual conviction. Obi-Wan nodded in understanding, sensing the transformation that had occurred in both of them during their time together. "The galaxy awaits us both," the Jedi Master replied simply, his eyes holding no judgment. As the shuttle landed, Maul paused, his mechanical hand resting on the hilt of his lightsaber as if weighing his options. The moment stretched between them, filled with unspoken words and possibilities neither had anticipated when their ordeal began. Maul boarded the shuttle without looking back. But his departure was different from what it might have been weeks earlier. Obi-Wan watched the ship disappear into the atmosphere, knowing their encounter had changed the trajectory of both their lives. The Jedi Master activated his own distress signal, confident that Republic forces would soon arrive to retrieve him. As he waited, Obi-Wan reflected on the philosophical insights Maul had shared, particularly regarding Palpatine's manipulation of both sides of the Clone Wars. This knowledge would prove invaluable in the coming conflict, potentially altering the course of the war itself. Meanwhile, aboard the Separatist shuttle, Maul found himself questioning orders he would once have followed without hesitation. The experience on Vancor had planted seeds of doubt that would continue to grow, potentially leading him down a different path than the one of vengeance he had walked for so long. The desert winds whispered across the plateau as two warriors who had been enemies went their separate ways, each carrying with them the memory of an alliance forged in darkness and survival. And in the vastness of space, the Force itself seemed to shift slightly, responding to the unexpected balance that had been found between two opposing souls in the most unlikely of circumstances. Let's move on to the next what-if theory. What if I told you that Luke and Leia were swapped at birth, creating entirely different paths for the galaxy's most famous twins? This alternate timeline reveals how their opposite upbringings would transform their destinies, with the Prince of Alderaan and the farm girl of Tatooine discovering their true heritage in dramatically different ways. The peaceful planet of Alderaan cradled Luke Skywalker in its mountain valleys and crystalline cities, where Bail Organa raised him as his own son and heir. Luke grew up surrounded by political discourse and diplomatic training, his natural empathy channeled into understanding the needs of Republic citizens across the galaxy. The Organa family's influence opened doors that would have remained closed to a moisture farmer's nephew, giving Luke unique insights into the workings of the Empire. His Force sensitivity manifested subtly at first, a knack for knowing when senators were hiding something, an instinct for finding peaceful resolutions to heated debates. The polished marble halls of the Alderaanian palace echoed with Luke's footsteps as he moved between diplomatic functions and private meditation sessions. Bail watched his adopted son with both pride and concern, sensing the power within him that could make Luke either a great leader or a great target. Meanwhile, on the desert planet of Tatooine, Leia Organa learned the harsh realities of life under twin suns from Owen and Beru Lars. The moisture farm became her classroom, where she developed mechanical skills that would serve her well in the years to come. Leia's Force sensitivity showed itself differently, an uncanny ability to repair broken machinery, an instinctive piloting skill that amazed even the seasoned racers at Mos Espa. Her rebellious streak emerged early, with Leia frequently sneaking away to Anchorhead or participating in underground races against her guardian's wishes. The Lars homestead became a prison she longed to escape, her dreams filled with stars and adventures beyond Tatooine's gravity well. Unlike her brother, Leia received no formal education in politics or diplomacy, learning instead the practical skills needed to survive in a harsh environment. The binary sunset painted the desert in shades of orange and purple as Leia stood outside the homestead, wondering about the parents she never knew. Her connection to the Force remained unrecognized, manifesting as nothing more than good luck and quick reflexes in her eyes. The Death Star plans reached Leia in a dramatically different way than they had in the original timeline. Rather than receiving them as a senator, Leia intercepted the transmission while working as a communications technician for a small shipping company. Her technical skills allowed her to decode the encrypted data, revealing the terrifying scope of the Empire's new weapon. Leia recognized the significance of what she held, her political instincts inherited from her biological parents stirring despite her isolated upbringing. The plans burned a hole in her pocket as she debated what to do with this dangerous knowledge. Unlike her brother, Leia had no network of contacts or resources to call upon, forcing her to rely on her wits and courage alone. The desert night was cold as she studied the schematics, understanding enough to know this weapon could destroy entire worlds. Her decision to find the Jedi mentioned in her father's journals came not from political duty but from a personal sense of right and wrong. Obi-Wan Kenobi, felt the disturbance in the Force when Leia activated her father's old lightsaber, its blue blade illuminating the Lars homestead in the dead of night. The old Jedi Master found her not as an idealistic farm boy, but as a hardened young woman with grease under her fingernails and fire in her eyes. "Your father wanted you to have this when you were old enough," Obi-Wan explained, studying Leia's reaction to the weapon that felt both alien and familiar in her hands. Leia's response was pragmatic rather than awed. She saw the lightsaber as a tool, not a mystical artifact. "What good is this against a space station the size of a moon?" she asked bluntly, her Tatooine practicality showing through. Obi-Wan found himself challenged by this different version of Anakin's child, whose connection to the Force manifested through mechanical intuition rather than mystical awareness. Their journey to Mos Eisley was filled with Leia's pointed questions and skeptical observations, forcing Obi-Wan to reconsider his approach to training her. The cantina's smoky atmosphere surrounded them as they sought passage off-world, Leia's hand never far from the blaster at her hip. Luke's fate aboard the Death Star took a dramatically different turn when he was captured during a diplomatic mission to discuss Alderaan's compliance with Imperial demands. The Death Star's sterile corridors felt like a maze as Luke was escorted to detention level 5, his political training kicking in despite the terrifying circumstances. Unlike Leia, Luke had no combat training or experience with weapons, relying instead on his understanding of Imperial bureaucracy and human psychology. He studied his captors carefully, noting their ranks and attitudes, looking for weaknesses he could exploit. The Force guided his words as he spoke with the Imperial officers, his calm demeanor and diplomatic language creating unexpected openings. Luke discovered that his position as Bail Organa's son gave him certain protections. The Empire wanted to avoid a diplomatic incident with such a prominent world. He used this leverage to delay his execution, buying time as he searched for a way to escape or contact the rebellion. The Death Star's control center became his chessboard as Luke manipulated Imperial officers against each other, his political instincts proving as valuable as a lightsaber in this deadly environment. Leia's arrival aboard the Death Star was not as a captured princess, but as a stowaway mechanic, using her technical skills to bypass security systems. The uniform she stole from a maintenance worker allowed her to move through the battle station with relative freedom, her knowledge of Imperial technology proving invaluable. Leia's goal was simple: rescue the captured diplomats and sabotage the Death Star if possible. Her Force sensitivity guided her through the station's labyrinthine corridors, leading her unerringly toward the detention block where Luke was being held. The rescue operation was nothing like the original timeline. Leia used her technical knowledge to override security systems rather than relying on a Jedi's powers. When she finally found Luke, the reunion was not of siblings but of strangers united by circumstance and a shared enemy. "I'm Leia Organa," she said simply, extending a grease-stained hand to the polished prince. Luke stared at her, sensing something familiar in her presence that he couldn't quite place. The twins' escape from the Death Star relied on their complementary skills. Luke's political knowledge and Leia's technical expertise, creating opportunities neither could have managed alone. They moved through the station like shadows, Leia disabling security systems, while Luke distracted Imperial personnel with carefully chosen words. The Force flowed between them in ways neither understood, their connection strengthening as they worked together toward a common goal. Unlike the original timeline, there was no old Jedi Master to sacrifice himself. Obi-Wan remained safely aboard the Millennium Falcon, coordinating their escape from orbit. Luke and Leia reached the hangar bay just as Imperial forces discovered their presence, turning their escape into a desperate battle. Leia's blaster fire covered Luke as he worked to open the hangar doors, his diplomatic skills useless in this firefight. The Millennium Falcon descended through the hangar opening as they ran toward it, blaster bolts ricocheting off the walls around them. As they finally boarded the ship and fled into hyperspace, Luke and Leia stood side by side, two strangers from opposite worlds who would soon discover they were two halves of the same whole. And in the quiet moments of their journey to Yavin, the Force itself seemed to hum with anticipation at the reunion of twins separated at birth, each shaped by the life they should never have known. Let's move on to the next what-if theory. What if I told you that Padmé Amidala's will to live proved stronger than her broken heart, allowing her to survive childbirth and alter the galaxy's destiny? This alternate timeline reveals how the former Queen's survival would transform both the Empire's rise and the Rebellion's formation, creating a very different future for her twin children. The medical droids on Polis Massa worked frantically as Padmé's life signs faltered, her body rejecting life after Anakin's betrayal. But unlike the original timeline, something shifted within her, a fierce determination ignited by the tiny cries of her newborn children. "My babies," she whispered, her voice barely audible but filled with sudden purpose as she reached toward the bassinets. The droids redoubled their efforts, administering advanced treatments that stabilized her condition when all seemed lost. Padmé's eyes fluttered open, taking in the sterile medical facility and the two perfect infants who would become her reason for living. The Force itself seemed to respond to her survival, sending ripples of possibility across the galaxy. Padmé's recovery was slow but determined, her political will translating into physical resilience as she fought to regain her strength. Obi-Wan visited her frequently, his expression a mixture of relief and apprehension as he watched her bond with the twins. "Anakin is gone," he told her gently, his voice heavy with grief for his fallen friend. Padmé nodded, her eyes dark with pain but also with a new resolve that frightened the Jedi Master. Bail Organa arrived soon after, offering sanctuary on Alderaan where she could recover in safety. The journey to Alderaan was made in secret, with Padmé and the twins traveling as refugees rather than royalty. The Alderaan palace became both sanctuary and prison, its beautiful rooms offering comfort while its walls represented the boundaries of her new life. Padmé spent hours studying her children's faces, seeing traces of Anakin in both Luke's features and Leia's spirit. The grief over Anakin's transformation into Vader warred with Padmé's love for her children, creating an internal conflict that defined her early recovery. Some nights, she would stare at the ceiling, remembering the man she had married and weeping for what he had become. Other days, she would channel her pain into planning, her political mind already working to understand and counter the Empire's growing power. "He's still in there somewhere," she whispered to Obi-Wan during one of his visits, her voice filled with desperate hope. The Jedi Master could only shake his head sadly, knowing the truth of Anakin's fall but lacking the words to comfort her. Padmé's hands would clench into fists when she saw Imperial broadcasts showing Vader at the Emperor's side, her love warring with rage at the monster wearing her husband's face. The twins seemed to sense her turmoil, crying when her emotions overwhelmed her despite her attempts to shield them. Bail and Bail Organa watched over her with concern, providing support while giving her space to process her grief. Despite her isolation, Padmé began using encrypted channels to contact trusted allies from her Senate days, laying the groundwork for what would become the rebellion. Her diplomatic skills remained sharp, allowing her to build a network of resistance without revealing her location or identity. The delegation of 2,000 petitions she had signed before her death became the foundation for this growing movement, with Padmé guiding it from the shadows. She spent hours each day reviewing intelligence reports and coordinating with senators who shared her concerns about Palpatine's growing power. The Alderaanian palace's secure communications room became her command center, its screens displaying data that would have shocked the Imperial Senate. Padmé's political acumen proved invaluable as she helped structure the early rebellion, creating cells that could operate independently while working toward common goals. Her knowledge of Republic systems and personnel allowed her to identify weaknesses in Imperial security and potential allies within the bureaucracy. The twins slept nearby, unaware that their mother was building an army to fight against their own father. The most difficult decision Padmé faced was whether to tell Luke and Leia the truth about their father and their own potential connection to the Force. She watched them play in the palace gardens, their laughter echoing as she debated how much burden to place on their young shoulders. Obi-Wan urged caution, warning that knowledge of their heritage could put them in greater danger. "They deserve to know who they are," Padmé argued, her voice tight with emotion as she held Luke's small hand. In the end, she compromised, telling them stories of their grandfather Anakin Skywalker, the Jedi Knight, while omitting the darker truth of what he had become. Leia seemed particularly attuned to the Force, her intuition and empathy already showing signs of something extraordinary. Luke displayed mechanical aptitude and piloting instinct that reminded Padmé painfully of Anakin. The twins grew up knowing they were special, but unaware of the full weight of their legacy or the darkness that awaited them. As the rebellion grew stronger, Padmé took on a more active role, using her diplomatic immunity to travel between worlds and coordinate resistance efforts. She adopted the identity of Lady Nebari, a distant cousin of the late Senator Amidala, allowing her to move more freely in imperial circles. Her presence inspired hope in those who had lost faith, with many seeing in her a symbol of the Republic's better days. Padmé's speeches, delivered in secret gatherings and transmitted through encrypted channels, reminded people of the freedoms they had lost under imperial rule. The Emperor became increasingly aware of this mysterious figure rallying opposition to his new order, though he never suspected her true identity. Vader himself felt disturbances in the Force when Padmé spoke, sensing something familiar yet impossible in her presence. The twins, now older, began training with Obi-Wan in secret, their Force abilities developing under both his guidance and their mother's watchful eye. Padmé balanced her roles as mother, leader, and symbol with grace, though the weight of her responsibilities sometimes kept her awake at night. The inevitable confrontation between Padmé and Vader came during a rebel mission to retrieve sensitive Imperial intelligence. Padmé, using her diplomatic credentials, gained access to an Imperial facility where the data was stored, unaware that Vader himself was overseeing the operation. Their paths crossed in a corridor lined with stormtroopers, the mechanical sound of Vader's breathing stopping Padmé in her tracks. "Senator Amidala," Vader rumbled, his voice distorted by the mask yet still carrying echoes of Anakin's cadence. Padmé turned slowly, her face pale but composed as she faced the monster wearing her husband's form. "That's not my name anymore," she replied, her voice steady despite the turmoil in her heart. "Padmé." The corridor seemed to shrink around them as years of love, loss, and betrayal hung in the air between mother and father, husband and wife, rebel and imperial. Padmé reached out with the Force, sensing the twins' presence within her, their combined Force signatures creating a disturbance that shook him to his core. The confrontation that followed was not a battle of lightsabers, but of words and emotions, with Padmé's love striking deeper than any physical blow could have. "Anakin, please," she whispered, using the name she had avoided for years as she looked into the black lenses of his mask. Vader hesitated, something deep within him responding to the voice he had tried to forget through years of dark side corruption. "That name no longer has meaning for me," he declared, though the mechanical breathing seemed to falter for a moment. Padmé stepped closer, ignoring the stormtroopers who raised their weapons at her approach. "Our children are alive," she said, watching for any reaction in the towering figure before her. The mask revealed nothing, but through the Force, Padmé felt the conflict raging within him, love warring with darkness, hope battling despair. "They need their father," she continued, her voice breaking slightly as she reached toward him. Vader recoiled as if struck, the internal struggle visible in the tension of his armored form. The moment passed as quickly as it had come, with Vader's duty to the Emperor reasserting itself over his personal feelings. "You will come with me," he commanded, his voice regaining its cold authority as he extended a gloved hand. Padmé activated the conceal device in her sleeve, releasing a smoke screen that allowed her to escape into the facility's ventilation system. Vader's enraged roar echoed through the corridor as he realized she had escaped, taking with her the knowledge that could potentially redeem him. The encounter left both profoundly shaken, with Padmé's hope renewed by the flicker of Anakin she had sensed beneath Vader's armor. Vader, for his part, found himself haunted by memories he had long suppressed, the sound of Padmé's voice echoing in the silence of his meditation chamber. The rebellion gained new momentum after this incident, with Padmé's survival becoming known to more Imperial dissidents who now had concrete proof that the Empire could be resisted. The twins, now aware of the full truth about their father, prepared for the roles they would play in the coming conflict, their mother's courage inspiring them to embrace their destiny. And in the darkness between stars, the balance of power began to shift, as a mother's love proved stronger than the dark side's corruption, creating ripples of hope that would eventually grow into waves of change across the galaxy. Let's move on to the next what-if theory. What if I told you that Ahsoka Tano's decision to remain with the Jedi Order created a ripple effect that might have saved Anakin Skywalker from his dark destiny? This alternate timeline reveals how the young Togrutta's continued presence as Anakin's Padawan could have altered the galaxy's fate by tempering his most dangerous impulses. The Jedi Temple's halls echoed with relief as Ahsoka was exonerated of the bombing charges, her name cleared through evidence discovered by Anakin and Plo Koon. Unlike the original timeline, the Council acknowledged their mistake publicly, with Mace Windu personally apologizing for their hasty judgment. Ahsoka accepted their apology with grace, but determination, her faith in the Order restored though tempered by wisdom beyond her years. The reunion with Anakin was emotional, his fierce protectiveness evident as he embraced his Padawan, promising never to let her face such danger alone again. The Force seemed to sigh with contentment around them, as if a terrible future had been narrowly avoided. Ahsoka's montrals twitched with renewed purpose as she resumed her place at Anakin's side, their bond stronger than ever. Ahsoka's influence on Anakin became increasingly apparent as the Clone Wars continued, her presence acting as a moral compass during his darkest moments. During the siege of Mandalore, when Anakin's rage threatened to overwhelm him after witnessing the death of young clones, Ahsoka placed a calming hand on his arm. "Feel the anger, Master, but don't let it control you," she whispered, her voice cutting through his fury like a knife. Anakin paused, breathing deeply as her words reached him, his blue eyes clearing as he regained control. These moments became more frequent as the war progressed, with Ahsoka developing an uncanny ability to sense when Anakin was approaching the edge. Their fighting styles evolved to complement each other perfectly, Ahsoka's acrobatic Shen form providing balance to Anakin's aggressive Gem So. The clone troopers under their command marveled at their synergy, calling them the dragon and its tail for the way they moved as one in battle. Ahsoka's presence became Anakin's anchor, keeping him grounded when the darkness threatened to pull him under. Ahsoka discovered Anakin and Padmé's secret marriage, not through suspicion but through accident, walking in on them during a rare private moment on Coruscant. The three stood frozen in shock, the air thick with tension as Ahsoka processed what she had witnessed. Rather than reporting them to the Council, Ahsoka chose understanding, her loyalty to Anakin outweighing her duty to Jedi rules. "I won't tell anyone," she promised, her voice steady despite the turmoil in her heart. This decision created a new dynamic between them, with Ahsoka becoming a confidant who could offer perspective on Anakin's struggles with attachment. She often mediated between Anakin and Padmé when their conflicting duties caused strain, her unique position allowing her to see both sides clearly. The secret weighed on her, but Ahsoka justified it by telling herself she was protecting Anakin from himself. The Force seemed to accept this compromise, the bonds between the three growing stronger through their shared secret. When Order 66 was executed, Ahsoka's proximity to Anakin created a dramatically different outcome than the original timeline. Aboard the Resolute during a routine mission, both Anakin and Ahsoka felt the disturbance in the Force as their fellow Jedi died across the galaxy. Rex, his chip activating, reached for his sidearm with mechanical precision, but Ahsoka sensed the change in him immediately. "Rex, no," she cried, using the Force to disarm him as Anakin turned to face other clones suddenly turning hostile. The battle that followed was chaotic and heartbreaking, with Anakin and Ahsoka fighting back-to-back against soldiers who had been their friends hours earlier. "What's happening?" Anakin demanded, his blue eyes wide with confusion and betrayal. Ahsoka shook her head, her own heart breaking as she defended against the clone's relentless attack. "It's a trap, Master," she realized, her voice tight with horror. "The Chancellor, it's been him all along." The revelation hit Anakin like a physical blow, his mind reeling as he connected Palpatine's manipulations to the current catastrophe. Unlike the original timeline, Ahsoka was there to ground him, to remind him of his duty to the Jedi rather than his fear of loss. "We need to warn the Council," Ahsoka insisted, her hand gripping his arm as the Resolute rocked under heavy fire. Anakin nodded, his expression hardening with resolve rather than falling into despair. Together, they fought their way to the bridge, taking control of the ship and setting course for Coruscant at maximum speed. During the journey, Ahsoka worked with Rex to remove his inhibitor chip, the process painful but successful. Anakin spent the time in meditation, his connection to the Force reaching out to the remaining Jedi, offering what warning he could. Ahsoka watched him with concern, sensing the darkness still pulling at him but also his determination to resist. The stars streaked past the viewport as they raced toward a confrontation that would determine the fate of the galaxy. Their arrival on Coruscant coincided with Mace Windu's confrontation with Palpatine in the Chancellor's office. Anakin and Ahsoka burst into the chamber just as Windu prepared to strike the final blow, creating a moment of hesitation that changed everything. "He must stand trial," Anakin declared, his voice firm as he moved between Windu and the defeated Chancellor. Ahsoka stood at his side, her lightsaber drawn but not activated, her presence a calming influence on her volatile master. Windu hesitated, sensing the change in Anakin and the truth in Ahsoka's concerned gaze. This moment of pause was all Palpatine needed, unleashing a torrent of Force lightning that caught all three Jedi off guard. The battle that followed was brutal, with Anakin and Ahsoka fighting alongside Windu against the unleashed Sith Lord. Together, they managed to subdue Palpatine, though not before the Sith Lord revealed his true nature and his plans for Anakin. "Join me, and together we can save Padmé from the death I have foreseen," Palpatine whispered, his yellow eyes locking with Anakin's. The temptation nearly overwhelmed Anakin, his fear for Padmé warring with his loyalty to the Jedi and Ahsoka's steady presence. "He's lying, Master," Ahsoka said, her voice cutting through Palpatine's poison like a blade. "The future isn't set, we can find another way." Anakin looked from Ahsoka to the captured Sith Lord, his expression torn between desperation and hope. In that moment he made a different choice than in the original timeline, turning away from Palpatine and toward his Padawan. "Take him away," Anakin ordered, his voice heavy with emotion as he turned his back on the path to darkness. The Jedi Council took custody of Palpatine, though the Sith Lord's influence had already spread through the Daeklis in the form of Order 66. Anakin and Ahsoka stood together as the Republic began to collapse around them, their bond stronger than ever but tested like never before. The Force seemed to breathe a sigh of relief, the terrible future that had been looming now averted by the power of their connection. In the aftermath, Anakin and Ahsoka became leaders of the surviving Jedi, working to rebuild the Order while protecting Padmé and the twins she carried. The path forward was not easy, with Anakin still struggling with the darkness that lurked within him, and Ahsoka serving as his constant anchor. "I couldn't have done this without you," Anakin admitted one evening as they watched the sunset from the temple's highest spire. Ahsoka smiled, her montrals tilting with affection as she replied, "That's what Padawans are for, Master." The Jedi Order began to reform, with Ahsoka's influence helping to create a more balanced approach to the Force that acknowledged both light and dark without succumbing to either extreme. Anakin fulfilled his destiny as the Chosen One not through destruction but through balance, his journey made possible by the Togruta who never left his side. The twins Luke and Leia grew up in a galaxy at peace, their Force sensitivity nurtured by both parents and their auntie Ahsoka, and in the quiet moments between battles and rebuilding, Anakin would look at his former Padawan with profound gratitude, knowing that her decision to stay had indeed changed everything, creating a future where hope flourished instead of despair. Let's move on to the next what-if theory. What if I told you that Mandalore's decision to join the Republic transformed the Clone Wars, shifting the balance of power with warrior culture and ancient technology? This alternate timeline reveals how the planet of warriors and pacifists united could have altered the galaxy's fate, bringing strength where there was once neutrality. The domed city of Sundari on Mandalore echoed with explosions as separatist forces launched a devastating surprise attack, shattering Duchess Setien's commitment to non-violence. The sight of dead civilians and burning buildings hardened Setien's resolve, her eyes cold with determination as she addressed the new Mandalorian Council. "We can no longer stand by while the galaxy burns," she declared, her voice carrying across the chamber as shocked senators listened. The vote to join the Republic was unanimous, with even the most ardent pacifist recognizing that true peace sometimes required strength. Republic ships arrived within days, their crews stunned to see Mandalorian warriors standing ready alongside the new Mandalorian Guard. The Force itself seemed to shift as this ancient warrior culture entered the conflict, changing the very nature of the war. Mandalorian warriors became an elite force within the Republic military. Their Beskar armor, and advanced weaponry giving them advantages over standard clone troopers. The 33rd Mandalorian Legion, led by former Death Watch members who had pledged loyalty to Satine, became legendary for their effectiveness in battle. Their tactics differed dramatically from Jedi methods, practical, brutal, and focused on maximum impact with minimum casualties. The sound of their jetpacks roaring across battlefields became a welcome sound to clone troopers who had grown weary of endless stalemates. Mandalorian weapons technology revolutionized Republic armaments, with Beskar alloys and advanced targeting systems giving their forces unprecedented advantages. The Jedi Council watched with concern as these warriors brought a level of lethality to the war that clashed with their principles. Yet even the most conservative masters couldn't deny the results. Planets that had been locked in years of fighting were liberated in weeks under Mandalorian assault. The smell of ozone and blaster fire filled the air as Mandalorian-led forces turned the tide of battle across the galaxy. Death Watch reacted to Mandalore's alliance with the Republic by openly embracing the separatist cause, becoming Count Dooku's most effective ground commanders. Pre Vizsla and his warriors brought their knowledge of Mandalorian tactics to the separatist military, creating a mirror image of the Republic's new advantage. The Clone Wars transformed into a conflict of Mandalorian versus Mandalorian, with brothers fighting on opposite sides across countless battlefields. The irony was not lost on Satine, who watched with sorrow as her people's warrior culture was turned against itself. "We have become what we most feared," she confided to Obi-Wan during a rare moment of quiet aboard her command ship. The Jedi Master could only nod in agreement, his own heart heavy with the cost of this necessary alliance. The Force seemed to weep as Mandalore tore itself apart, its warriors divided between two causes that both claimed to serve their people's best interest. The galaxy watched in fascination and horror as the greatest warriors in known space waged war against each other with devastating efficiency. The relationship between Obi-Wan and Satine evolved dramatically in this new context, their shared history creating both tension and strength in their professional alliance. No longer separated by duty and principle, they found themselves working closely together, their old feelings resurfacing amid the chaos of war. "You wear the uniform well, Duchess," Obi-Wan remarked during a strategy session, his eyes holding warmth that went beyond military courtesy. Satine smiled, her regal bearing softened by the affection between them. "And you've become quite the general, Master Jedi," she replied, her voice carrying respect and something deeper. Their professional relationship was tested by the brutal realities of war, with Satine making difficult decisions that sometimes conflicted with her pacifist ideals. Obi-Wan became her moral compass, reminding her of the values they both cherished even as necessity demanded compromise. The Force seemed to hum around them when they were together, their connection strengthening both their resolve and their effectiveness as leaders. Anakin Skywalker found unexpected kinship with Mandalorian warriors, their aggressive tactics and independent spirit resonating with his own nature. The 501st Legion often fought alongside Mandalorian forces, with Anakin developing a grudging respect for their effectiveness and discipline. "They fight like Jedi, but without the restraints," he observed to Obi-Wan after a particularly successful joint operation. The Mandalorians in turn were impressed by Anakin's power and tactical brilliance, though they found his emotional volatility concerning. Bo-Katan Kryze, leader of the 3032nd, often worked directly with Anakin, their contrasting styles creating surprisingly effective results in battle. "You need to channel that anger, Skywalker," she told him after a mission where his recklessness had nearly gotten them killed. Anakin bristled at first but gradually came to value her blunt wisdom, finding in her a mentor who understood his nature without judging it. The Mandalorian emphasis on honor and clan loyalty appealed to something deep in Anakin's character, offering him a sense of belonging he sometimes struggled to find within the Jedi Order. Mandalorian influence began to reshape the Jedi's approach to the war, with some knights adopting more practical methods inspired by their warrior allies. The Council debated this shift in philosophy, with traditionalists like Mace Windu concerned about the Jedi becoming too militarized. Yet even Yoda acknowledged that the Mandalorians had much to teach about effective warfare without sacrificing principles. To know the warrior's way without becoming the warrior, a balance we must find, the ancient master advised during a council meeting. Jedi who worked closely with Mandalorian units began incorporating elements of their tactics, focusing on precision strikes and minimal force rather than prolonged engagements. The smell of incense in the temple meditation chambers began to mix with the scent of cleaning oil for armor and weapons, symbolizing the changing nature of the order. Young Jedi Padawans trained with Mandalorian instructors, learning practical combat skills that complemented their Force abilities. The Jedi Order evolved in ways it hadn't in centuries, becoming more adaptable and effective while struggling to maintain its core identity. The Clone Wars reached a dramatically different conclusion with Mandalorian strength, preventing Palpatine's rise to power. Mandalorian intelligence networks uncovered evidence of the Chancellor's Sith identity long before Order 66 could be executed. Satine and Obi-Wan presented this evidence to the Senate, with Mandalorian warriors standing guard as protection against Imperial retaliation. The public revelation of Palpatine's betrayal sent shockwaves through the Republic, shattering his support base and exposing the separatist movement as his creation. Without the chaos of Order 66 and the Jedi Purge, the Republic began to heal, with Mandalorian forces helping to eliminate remaining separatist holdouts. Satine's vision of a peaceful Mandalore was realized not through pacifism alone, but through the strength to defend that peace when necessary. The Jedi Order, tempered by its alliance with the warriors, emerged from the war with a renewed sense of purpose and balance. Anakin Skywalker, influenced by Mandalorian values of honor and loyalty, found a healthier path that balanced his power with discipline, avoiding the fall that had awaited him in other timelines. The galaxy settled into an era of unprecedented stability, with Mandalore serving as a bridge between the Republic's ideals and the practical realities of maintaining peace. The Jedi Order incorporated Mandalorian perspectives into its teachings, creating a new generation of knights who understood both the spiritual and practical aspects of their role. Obi-Wan and Satine finally acknowledged their love, marrying in a ceremony that blended Jedi and Mandalorian traditions, symbolizing the union of their peoples. Anakin and Padmé raised their twins openly, with Mandalorian warriors and Jedi Masters both serving as mentors and protectors. The Force flowed through the galaxy in perfect balance, light and dark existing in harmony rather than conflict. Mandalore itself became a beacon of hope, proving that strength and peace could coexist when guided by wisdom and principle. The sound of armor and lightsabers no longer represented war, but the protection of a hard-won peace. And in the quiet moments between adventures, the people of the galaxy would look to the stars with gratitude, knowing that a single decision by one planet had indeed changed everything, creating a future where warriors and guardians stood together to preserve the light. Let's move on to the next what-if theory. What if I told you that the Jedi Council's true understanding of the Chosen One prophecy could have prevented their destruction and transformed the galaxy's fate? This alternate timeline reveals how a different interpretation of bringing balance to the Force might have saved the Order from its own complacency. The Jedi Temple's High Council chamber grew silent as Master Yoda presented a radical reinterpretation of the ancient prophecy. Balance to the Force perhaps not mean the destruction of the dark side alone. The ancient master mused, his ears drooping with sudden insight. Mace Windu leaned forward, his expression thoughtful as he considered this unsettling possibility. The prophecy hologram glowed between them, its words seeming to shift meaning as the council contemplated their true significance. If balance is the goal, Ki-Adi-Mundi wondered aloud, does that imply we currently represent imbalance? The question hung heavy in the chamber, challenging centuries of Jedi certainty about their role in the galaxy. The council's meditation sessions grew longer and more intense as they explored this troubling interpretation of the prophecy. Ancient texts were re-examined, their passages revealing uncomfortable truths about the Jedi's growing attachment to political power. The Force itself seemed to confirm their fears, whispering warnings about the dangers of their increasing entanglement with Republic affairs. "We have become the light that casts the darkest shadow," Obi-Wan observed during one session, his voice heavy with realization. The council began making quiet preparations for a potential future where the Jedi Order would need to transform or perish. Secret archives were opened, containing knowledge about the Sith that had been suppressed for generations. The temple's atmosphere shifted, becoming more contemplative as masters and knights alike sensed the changing tides within their order. The sound of Yoda's Gema stick tapping echoed through the halls as he guided this painful but necessary self-reflection. Anakin Skywalker's training took a dramatically different path under this new understanding of the prophecy and his role as the Chosen One. Rather than suppressing his emotions, the Jedi taught him to acknowledge and understand them as part of achieving true balance. "Your feelings are not the enemy, young one," Yoda instructed during a meditation session, his voice gentle yet firm. Anakin found this approach far more natural than the rigid emotional control the Jedi had traditionally demanded. His training included studying both light and dark side philosophies, learning to recognize the value in each, while avoiding their extremes. The Council assigned multiple masters to guide him, ensuring he received diverse perspectives rather than the singular focus Obi-Wan had provided in the original timeline. Anakin flourished under this approach, his power growing stronger but more stable as he learned to navigate the full spectrum of the Force. The Chosen One began to understand his true purpose, not as a destroyer of darkness, but as a bridge between opposing forces. The Jedi Order implemented significant reforms to address the imbalance they had identified within themselves. Their political involvement was gradually reduced, with Jedi resigning from military commands and advisory roles in the Senate. The Temple's emphasis shifted from martial training to spiritual development, with more time spent in meditation and less in combat practice. Younglings were taught about the dark side, not as something to be feared and avoided, but as a natural aspect of the Force to be understood and respected. The Council established outreach programs to connect with Force-sensitive traditions outside the Jedi Order, learning from other perspectives on balance and harmony. These changes were not without controversy, with some masters arguing that the Order was abandoning its responsibilities to the Republic. Yet the majority recognized that true service sometimes required stepping back rather than intervening directly. The Force seemed to respond positively to these reforms, flowing more freely through the Temple and its inhabitants. When the Clone Wars erupted, the Jedi Order approached the conflict with dramatically different strategies and priorities. Rather than accepting military commands, Jedi served as mediators and negotiators, working to resolve the underlying disputes fueling the separatist movement. Anakin Skywalker became a symbol of this new approach, using his unique understanding of both light and dark to find common ground between opposing factions. The Council refused to take sides in the conflict, maintaining their neutrality while working to protect civilian populations caught in the crossfire. This stance frustrated both the Republic and Separatists, who had counted on Jedi support for their respective causes. Without Jedi generals leading their armies, the Clone Wars became a more conventional conflict, lacking the supernatural elements that had made it so devastating. The Jedi focused instead on uncovering the true source of the conflict, their investigations gradually revealing Palpatine's manipulation of both sides. The Temple's chambers buzzed with quiet determination as the Jedi worked to expose the Sith plot without being drawn into open warfare. The Jedi's voluntary reduction of political power created unexpected opportunities for peace and reform within the Republic. With the Jedi no longer serving as the Republic's enforcers, the Senate was forced to develop its own solutions to galactic problems. Chancellor Palpatine found his influence diminished without Jedi opposition to rally against, his attempts to consolidate power meeting greater resistance. Senators like Bail Organa and Mon Mothma stepped forward to fill the leadership vacuum, proposing reforms that addressed the corruption and inequality fueling the separatist movement. The Jedi Order became respected advisors rather than military commanders, their wisdom sought but not automatically heeded. This new dynamic allowed the Republic to begin healing its divisions, with negotiations gradually replacing battles as the primary means of resolving disputes. The Force flowed more freely through the galaxy as the Jedi's light no longer cast such an oppressive shadow. The Temple's spires gleamed in the sunlight, no longer symbols of power but beacons of wisdom and balance. The Jedi Order's evolution toward true balance prevented the rise of the Empire and the destruction that would have followed. Without Jedi generals to betray through Order 66, Palpatine's plan collapsed before it could be fully implemented. The Sith Lord's identity was revealed through careful investigation rather than dramatic confrontation, with evidence presented to the Senate that even his allies could not ignore. Anakin Skywalker fulfilled his destiny as the Chosen One not by destroying the Sith but by demonstrating how light and dark could coexist in harmony. His understanding of balance became the foundation for a new Jedi philosophy that would guide the Order for generations to come. The Clone Wars faded into history as a painful but ultimately transformative period that forced the Republic and the Jedi to confront their own flaws. The galaxy entered an era of unprecedented peace and stability, with the Jedi Order serving not as rulers or warriors but as guardians of balance and harmony. And in the quiet meditation chambers of the temple, the Force itself seemed to sigh with contentment, finally achieving the equilibrium that had been prophesied so long ago. The stars above hold countless stories, each one a path not taken in the vast tapestry of what might have been. These alternate realities reveal how fragile destiny truly is, how the smallest choice could reshape the galaxy in profound and unexpected ways. The Force flows like an endless river of possibilities, branching into streams that lead to entirely different futures for beings we thought we knew so well. In exploring these what-if scenarios, we deepen our understanding of the original saga, seeing how each character's journey might have transformed with different decisions at crucial moments. The enduring themes of hope, redemption, and balance echo through all these timelines, showing how these universal forces persist regardless of the path taken. The Force works in mysterious ways across all possible realities, connecting these divergent stories in ways both seen and unseen. Stories hold a unique power to transport us, allowing our minds to wander through galaxies that exist only in imagination yet feel tangibly real. The quiet of night envelops us as we consider these alternate galaxies, each one a complete world with its own triumphs and tragedies. In the space between heartbeats, we can almost hear the whisper of lightsabers in different battles, feel the weight of different choices made by familiar faces. The Force binds all these possibilities together, creating a cosmic tapestry more intricate and beautiful than any single timeline could capture. These what-if scenarios remind us that destiny is not predetermined but forged through the choices we make, large and small. The stars above seem to shimmer with the light of countless possible futures, each one valid in its own right within the vastness of the Force. As we drift toward sleep, these alternate realities continue to exist in the realm of imagination, waiting for curious minds to explore their secrets. The gentle rhythm of the night carries us away, leaving these stories to unfold in the quiet corners of our dreams. And in the deep stillness, as consciousness fades, these alternate galaxies continue to turn, their stars watching silently over the infinite possibilities of what might have been.